the right did. And then the left waited a week, then they came out and they said, oh no, this happens all the time. It's a problem. Linda Curtis correctly says, you have to prove chemtrails to exist to label it a chemtrail. Exactly. Before you can ask me to debunk your theory, you have to bunk it. And I should probably put a note on this. Order of bunking. And this is for autohoaxology. I'll put an article up about it because this is a key point. And this is Hitchens' razor at work. Someone might have a conspiracy theory about something and you might say that's hogwash. And if they say, well, then explain this and this, you can assess it for yourself. But the question of it is, the question that I'm positing here is, has the thing been established to exist as they define it? Like, does it have to be debunked? Like, all right, today, August 5th, 2023, Infinite Plane Saturn Day, open phones for open minds and even closed minds, blinkered minds, filtered minds, even people with mind aids. You're all welcome to call in 1-505-349-0420. Ollie Goering quotes, "Sweet dreams in my quarantine." Yeah, beautiful song. For a lot of people, it made 2020 a lot better. When you heard Mask of the Beast, COVID Cooties, these songs that really encapsulated what the whole thing was about. COVID 1984, for example. These are all things that just say to me, look, at least we have something that's going to survive this entire mess that's worth hanging on to, a souvenir. And I'm not talking about the dirty socks that you wrapped on your faces, but I'm talking about creative works, true counterculture. Elephant Tusk says, Tim, what do you think of those 90s scandals? Joey Buttafuoco, Amo Fisher, Lorena Bobbitt, O.J. Simpson. All psyops in the world stage? O.J. Simpson, yeah, obviously. We all know Megyn Kelly's Nicole Simpson. But as far as Lorena Bobbitt and these others, I think there might be video evidence of the Bobbitt character after the fact, after the reattachment. He had some career reboot as an adult performer, so I haven't seen that, and I can't reject it without having consulted the evidence. But with a name like Buttafuoco, I kind of think it's probably a scammy mainstream media psyop. Okay, so phones are now officially open, and if you want to call in, numbers on the screen. You won't be hearing the annoying ringer. As I said before, I mute the ringer, which has really confounded many, many live streamers trying to use Skype. And if you want to call from out of the country, you can also access Skype account username Infinite Plane Radio. Now, all of these 90s scandals are worth looking at. Retro auto hoaxing. JonBenet Ramsey, obviously, Kate Perry, the parents give it away. Hey, what's up, caller? Is this EOTR.
Hey, what's going on, Tim?
Hey, what's up? Is this east of the Rockies? That's who this is?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I know. You were trying to call in. I told you 7 o'clock. Generally, though, it will be
Yeah,
earlier. But
we're
now I think your radio's on in the back. You might want to mute your speaker a little bit. But anyway, what topic interests you? I realize you're a IPR press pass carrier. Am I right?
yeah, we get a lot of echo going on here. So
That's all on your end. It's not in your head. It's in your speakers. Just turn your speakers down.
I'll take care of it.
Anyway, people are just now flooding in. It looks like we've got about 3 dozen people in the chat here. And someone asked me what I think about the 90s psyops. And I like to point this out. They didn't just start faking the news with Sandy Hook and the Boston bombing or 9/11. They've been faking the
No,
news
of
since the
course
news
they
started.
didn't. No, can you hear me now, Tim?
Oh, loud and clear. Lima Charlie. So, in other
Oh,
words, we got to retro auto hoax all these stories. We have to look back and ask, did we accept a lie? And I say, yeah, if it's on mainstream, it's questionable.
hey, you know who I am, don't you, Tim? You know who I am. I'm your reporter from the East Palestine.
Yes, you're the only non controlled opposition, non mainstream media reporter to have
No,
investigated.
don't call me your only guy.
No, I'm saying you're the only one who went to Palestine after the train derailment. We have 160 press pass
Yeah.
carriers. But my point is, everyone else who went there was like alternative media who just fed into the paranoia about some kind of toxic event.
Well, what we
Now, did you catch that? Now, when you went to Palestine,
sorry about that.
maybe it wasn't.
Sorry about that.
Was Palestine toxic?
Get me all excited here because I'm on the air and stuff. But I'm coughing.
No, I'm just hoping you
But
didn't
yeah,
catch that.
no,
You didn't catch that while on assignment to East Palestine.
no, you didn't send me there or anything.
No, anyway. No, my point being, though, is that we don't have any reality testing whenever these big psyops happen, and the people that do investigate that aren't part of the mainstream are always feeding into the paranoia. And that was my point of bringing up the fact that you went out there just to have some eyes on the ground, and it seemed to me that there was nothing going on.
There was nothing going on there. Yeah, I got a cousin who lives there, and he even says, "What the hell's going on here?"
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the habit of most people, though, is to rely on secondhand information. And that's why we are where we are, where people believe pretty much anything. I'm waiting for the alien invasion with bad special effects, and it's going to just impress everybody.
Well, the alien. Come on now. That's going to happen. You know that's going to happen. They're already admitting that everything from 1947 is it happened.
Now, I am familiar with 1947, although there was a 1946 UFO sighting that was,
No, it was the
R-
1947.
Roswell was 47 Corona Field, but Marjorie Cameron reportedly saw one in 1946. Now, there's 160,000 Hollywood actors on strike. That's a lot of people who could be wearing alien costumes. Just to think about, the scale of the operation. I think they have the manpower.
Yeah, it might be. I'm on your side, buddy.
Well, anyway, I'm so done with expecting a doomsday, and I never have. I've always just been interested in the eschatology because I think it's a way of framing people's worldview into the shorter time span. And so many people yesterday, especially on Twitter, were waiting for Trump to get a headshot in Montgomery, Alabama, and it didn't happen. So I'm kind of looking at the fallout here, and I'm asking, is that a reasonable approach to take a date and then reverse engineer? I don't think it's the same thing as what we're doing, which is more about objectively analyzing all media and looking at predictive programming as a model. I think there's a bit of too much numerology in a lot of the truther communities. What do you think?
I think there's a big time problem there. It's just look at everything that's going on. What they want you to believe is not what you should believe.
Now, Trump.
Everything no Trump. Everything they want you to believe is not happening. Think about it.
No, do you think Trump was elected or selected in 2016? Like, is he an outsider, or are you in the camp that I am, that we're looking at an entirely staged apparatus from A to Z?
Oh, he was completely elected.
I mean, what I mean is like,
When did you start? I gotta ask one question. When did you start interviewing me? I thought I was interviewing you.
well, I'm asking just because I want to get your perspective on this, because yesterday, like I said, all kinds of people were hung up on this notion that there's going to be an assassination. And I'm like, where are people getting this idea? Like, this can't be based on anything objective. And I think that might be the whole strategy here. I think there's a deliberate strategy to confuse people, everybody, especially the people who are, critical thinkers. And so I think they're adding a lot of mysticism and mumbo jumbo into the mix. That's all I'm saying.
There is a lot of mumbo jumbo. Can I say one thing before you ask another question? Can I say who I am?
Yeah, why don't you introduce yourself to the chat here? There's like 50 people here now.
Thank you. I am Watchdog. You guys may have seen me on inside the chat screens. I am Watchdog. I am also ETOR Online, which will be I don't know, sooner or later, it's going to be a online, something like what Tim does, but not what Tim does.
Well, that's good. That's what we want.
Okay.
I want to have other platforms to bounce off of. Maybe we can do,
I'm not gonna do what you do. I'm gonna do what I do. I'm gonna do what ETOR Online is gonna be basically like an Art Bell style show or something like that.
Will you be doing callers or anything like that, or just you?
I would love to. I want to do callers and yes.
Cool. Yes, absolutely. I would definitely support that. East of the Rockies.
No. Do not say east of the Rockies.
EOTR.
I think
Got
it's
EOTR.
I think east of the Rockies. I think is trademarked. So it's going to be EOTR online.
Although I do kind of like that callback. I mean, the whole idea of Art Bell, east of the Rockies number, west of the Rockies, but it does let people know that you're a probably fringy open phones, or at least not a total mainstream media regurgitator.
That's because you're so friggin' cool. Thank you.
No, I look forward to it. I'm glad that you're doing this, and I'm glad that you're able to get through.
No. Let's just keep talking.
Oh yeah, I'm not in a rush. This is Infinite Plane Saturn Day, where I don't have a list of bullet points.
I know. We're gonna talk all night. Yeah. Well, I want to talk to one of your buddies too here tonight, and we just do it all night.
Hey, Jake the A-hole's in the chat. You follow Jake's channel?
No. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but
you're missing out. You're missing out if you don't listen to Jake the A-hole.
No. What's his name? Damn it. All right, hell, you want to make me do it? I'm gonna pull up your channel, buddy.
Yeah, pull up the chat. Pull up the chat. But look, if you wanna be up with all of the people who are cutting edge media fakery, I can give you the short list, and it's gonna be JLB fakeologist, Jake the A-hole,
fakeologist. That's who I'm calling out. Why don't you get fakeologist on here right now? Because I don't know. Here's what I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about you, me, fakeologist, doing a like a Saturday night show, kind of like Get it like Saturday. Why don't we just sit here and bullshit? You know what I mean?
You, me, and fakeologist. Okay, it wouldn't be built
He's
bullshitting, but
not
yeah.
here, isn't he?
Well,
Yeah,
He's
he's
on
not
Toronto
here.
time. I think I could probably reach him. In fact, I'll tell you what. Um,
Why don't you get him?
I will send out a message if he's not live right now.
Well, do you want to stay alive with me or?
I will try to reach out to him, and I'll find out if I can do conference calls like this, or if you have to join via the Skype link with the Skype app. Which, if you're going to do a call-in program, you might want to get the Skype app, and I'll show you how to bypass the ringer.
Well, yeah, I get me and you've actually talked about this a little bit. We're a little bit closer than you think.
Yeah, I remember talking about this before. I thought it would be a smart idea once a week to have a panel, and then to open it up. But because what we're trying to do is,
Well, that's what I want to do. Is I want to have a panel, and I want to have a panel basically with you, like I said, you, me, and I don't know. Well, I want to do a funny panel though.
have to find somebody funny to join us. Do you know anybody?
Yeah, you, you're funny.
Jake the A-hole's funny. He's actually a comedian channel. That's why they don't censor him. I should have marked my channel's comedy this whole time.
Do you want to do something like that? Like I said, every Sunday night.
Works for me. We'll find a list of topics. We'll get some.
All your followers will love it.
Okay. Now you're sure? Okay. Yeah, this is good. This is good. We'll do it. We'll make something like this work. I think that I can find a third person, and we'll bounce some ideas around.
All right,
All right.
bounce some ideas around.
All right. Well, hey, listen. Stick around. Other people are trying to call in, but stick around and call back if nobody does, if you feel like it. And we're going to continue this conversation in Gilded about setting up some kind of a panel. I think that would be great. I think it'd be fun. And we could probably make it happen, like, as in tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow.
You remember who I am, right?
Absolutely, I remember who you are. I sent you a press pass. You sent me a picture of it. I made it my thumbnail for a couple of weeks. Yes, I remember each and every person who calls in.
Oh my God, you sent me 10 damn things, didn't you?
Yep, I think you actually ordered a collection of the Penguinotti paintings. You know, the little ones with the wrenches, and I think I sent.
10,
Yeah,
10 of them. 10 of
absolutely.
them.
Okay, yeah. Now I remember very
You
specifically.
know me. Okay, you know me. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Know who
All
you
right.
are. Appreciate the support as always. This is Watchdog, and yeah, definitely stay in touch, and we'll make something happen.
All right. Later, buddy.
Thank you for calling. All right, and Let's Go says I would tune in. Rippington 41 says good afternoon. Cheesy Cool says sup Tim, love the show. You Jake are among the few tolerable truthers anymore. Curious your thoughts on the concave cellular Earth idea. Don't buy it, but find it interesting. Okay, good question. Good point you raised here about the few tolerable truthers, and it is true. And there's a reason why we're still around. I mean, for the most part, the people who are just going with the flow or following trends or who are shills, they tend to die off. Trolls tend to eventually expire. The people who are real, I think, are going to still be here when the dust settles. And right now, we're living in the deluge of disinformation. I think this is part of the Aquarian age. I describe this as a sea of irrelevance, as Huxley did. And I kind of feel like right now, what we offer is something of a life preserver. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, what's up, Tim? This is Jake, the a-hole.
Jake the Orifice. Glad that you were here in the chat. And hey, what do you think about the idea of panel calls on Sundays to talk about these types of things in a less serious context?
And whatever you're doing on your streams, I tune in from quite a bit because you're like one of the only other channels that talks about the world stage and stuff. There's very few to choose from, and so whatever, if you have a stream going on and I'm like doing whatever, I'll throw it on in the background. So or if I'm going on a long drive, 30 minutes, an hour, I'll throw on your stream, rather than listen to music even. So, yeah, I listen to a lot of the streams, man. So,
Awesome. Well,
uh,
everybody knows your work, Jake the A-hole here, and honestly, I find your stuff all over Twitter. I mentioned this before. People will take clips of your videos, especially your sports breakdowns, and I mean, you're
yeah,
someone who's been slaughtering these sacred cows for a long time, and a lot of people are like, "Yeah,
yeah.
everything's fake, but sports are real." I'm like, "What? What a bit of cognitive dissonance."
If you really want to know, Tim, last season for 4 months, my channel was unstoppable and had more growth than it ever had. I got 15,000 subs in 4 months by saying that the NFL is rigged and proving it, like breaking down the footage. There's only like 3 guys in the world who were doing it, and the one guy who was like the number one guy, I squashed him in his channel easily, and he lost his mind and then decided to start making attack pieces against me to get people to hate me, and it didn't work. So I got 6 million views in 4 months on the NFL content, a lot of it coming through the shorts. And what they did halfway through the season, no, 3/4 of the way through the season, they had the NFL talking heads say that the NFL is not rigged. It's just the refs who are missing calls. There's people online who are saying the NFL's rigged. Those people are crazy. Yeah, it's just the refs that making bad calls. So they had to, because of me, one guy, have the NFL talking heads address the entire world that the league is not rigged. They promise it's not. It's just bad reffing. And so I am the reason that happened. One guy,
So
6 million views.
you called
Yeah.
into question the very legitimacy of one of the cornerstones of their mass mind control operations in such an effective way that they actually had to do damage
The
control.
NFL is as fake as the WWE, and if you slow down the plays and you see how much money's on the line and you see how many teams who suck will win, you know, a team who's looking terrible will suddenly look fantastic 2-3 weeks in a row, and then they'll go back to looking terrible. You'll have a great quarterback on a roll, but then he has 2-3 games where he just can't throw a ball. You have, all-star receivers dropping wide open passes. You have starting defensive players just diving at people's feet and missing tackles. So now what guys are doing in the NFL on defense is they're just diving at the feet of the guy with the ball, purposely not trying to make a tackle and letting a guy run on by. So when you see 3 guys in a row dive and miss on purpose, then you realize like the whole defense is just, they're all in on it. Every player on the field is in on it, and it's just a big act. And the only way that they can script these super tight games and get the exact result they want to beat the sports bettors basically anytime they want is to script it. So there's literally no reason to not script it. Leaving it to chance so that Joe Blow Plumber can beat the NFL is never going to happen, and it doesn't happen. So
Wow.
it has to be rigged.
It
There's
reminds me of,
literally no way it cannot be.
I remember as a kid trying to explain to my friend how wrestling was fake, and it's like, yeah, every time he stomps his foot and punches, it's for effect. And that whole idea of wrestling being fake was actually not publicly, it was an open secret, I guess. But this is a much bigger issue, I think. I think this is much bigger because not everybody's a wrestler, but everybody.
That's a good comparison.
It's the same kind of thing.
That's a good comparison. Here's the deal: back in 40s, 50s, 60s, even in the 70s and until the 80s, the wrestling was protected. If you were to talk to a wrestler and ask them if it was real, they would tell you, "Hell yeah, it's real," and I'll kick your ass if you don't think it's real. Like they would get mad at you and try and intimidate you if you were to try and say wrestling wasn't real. So the business was always protected until Vince McMahon made it global and bought up all the territories. And then he said, okay, this is entertainment. And then everyone was like, oh yeah, we knew it was fake all along. Yeah, we always knew it was fake. But there was a time where people in the South in the 40s and 50s were all thinking that shit was real. A lot of them, And so it wasn't always known that wrestling was phony or that it was a work. And it was a very well protected secret, like as far as with the wrestlers going. And a real fight is boring. To watch 2 guys roll on the ground is fucking boring, whereas putting on an extravagant wrestling match is more entertaining. And so you apply the same thing to the NFL. If you have two defensive teams that are going to have a low-scoring defensive battle and it's going to be boring, people are going to stop watching after the first half. Whereas if you have an exciting shootout between two teams that just throw the ball all over the field and it goes to overtime, and it's a last-second winning field goal. Well, now you can keep the crowd interested for the entire 4-hour experience and cram all those ads down their throat. So it's in the best interest of the NFL to make their product exciting. And so what I've noticed is they emphasize offense. And defense is like they have guys falling on their face, diving and missing. So in real life, defense is easier to play than offense. And a good defense stops an offense more so than an offense can score on a defense. But the NFL has their game scripted to where a guy can throw the ball 500 yards in a game and throw 5 touchdowns, and you have video game-like numbers hitting the board. And so what they have set up is a legal gambling system now where you can bet on your phone or any device in the middle of a game. So while a team is winning, you can bet on the winning team. You can, bet on any sport across the board, and so they can see all the money that's in play live, and then tell the actors on the field to do a certain thing to make the outcome one way or the other, which suits whatever they want, whatever the league's interest is. They can have that team win and scoop up a bunch of money from sports bettors. They can also have markets that are slumping have a winning season, and then all the fans return and buy season tickets and stuff. So the NFL could pick and choose whoever they want before the season starts to be the Super Bowl winner, and they already have the Super Bowl winner already picked out. And a lot of people do not want to believe that because football means more to them than who runs the world.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I see this phenomenon with the moon landing with football where it's like, oh, we won the football game. We won the Super Bowl. We landed on the moon. America did it. They identify themselves so much with these idols and this fakery that it's like an ego blow for them to realize they've been had. For me, what really opened my eyes as to the fakeability was things like, hey, look, Joe Theismann broke his leg on the field at the 40th yard line.
Oh, God.
And then 33 years later to the day, the same exact injury happens to someone else while he's watching. And it's the same team.
Alex Smith. Okay,
yes.
Let me go ahead and
please
fill that one out for you because you know. Okay, Alex Smith played for the Redskins. Joe Theismann played for the Redskins. Both of them were quarterbacks. Both of them had the exact same injury on the exact same spot on the field 33 years apart. Oh, and here's the best one. Joe Theismann was at the game that day for Joe Theismann Appreciation Day.
Yeah, he's actually quoted.
He was at the game when Alex Smith had the same injury as he did 33 years earlier. Now, here's the deal. Both those injuries look real when you watch them back. They look like their leg gets caught up and snapped behind them. So the injuries on film look like it's a real injury. At least the Theismann one does. So I wonder if the Theismann one was legit and then the Alex Smith one was recreated as some sort of fucking ritual.
Easily. That would make a lot of sense because the first one I thought, how could they possibly fake that? That's a stretch because this is like an open air thing, but that second one had to be coordinated. And the name Theismann, though, strikes me as a huge joke just because it was a leg injury. But when I saw that, I realized, you know what? We can't look at these games as any different from anything else on TV. It's riggable.
So it's been taken to court. If you do the research, a Jets fan took the league to court. It's saying that the games aren't legitimate and that he wants to be refunded and this, that, and the other. And they ruled in favor of the NFL that it's entertainment and that all they promise you is that you get to see a football game. They don't promise you that it's a 100% legit game. It's just you're buying a ticket to see a football game, and it's purely for entertainment. So the refs are actors, part of the show. The players are part of the show, and it's a big show. And whatever they think they can get the best ratings and the most money is the direction that they go. you
And
know?
and let's add, it's not just football; it's the nothing but actors NBA, and that was pretty obvious with LeBron James scoring that record 38 points or whatever it was. I mean, there was this just repeated theme here in all the sports where it's obviously riggable. You see it in some of these events that are just too perfect to be real. And it's also true that these various athletes are constantly being used in the psyops. Like, look how they use Kyrie Irving
Yes,
to shut down Flat Earth, for example.
yes. And the Kobe Bryant, the helicopter death, and him scoring the 81 points. Like, if you go back and watch when he scored 81, it's like everyone just stands there and lets Kobe shoot and score from wherever he wants. And the NBA has the technology to magnetize the balls in the rims. It's 100%. They choose when the ball goes in and when it does not. So if you owned the NBA and you had infinite amount of money, wouldn't you want to make sure that you could control whether the ball was going to go in the hoop or not on any given shot, no matter what player takes it? Wouldn't you like to be in control of that if you were the owner?
Absolutely. And this also suggests something else. And I thought about this with the DeMar Hamlin thing. I'm like, wait a minute here. That's obviously fake, but everybody's kneeling except for the one guy with the 33 on his back. His name happens to be Neil or something, but it's like all the players.
Tim, me and you are the only two channels that said it was fake. All the other so-called truthers said he died of the jab,
Yeah,
and
they
he's cloned.
they all took the bait, and we did not. And at that time, I thought, you know what? This here almost has to settle it. Every player has to be in on the rigged game. There's no outsiders. There's
They
no
all are.
rogues.
Every single player. So when I tell people that, here's the fanboy response. Well, how come no one tells the secret? So I have to, whenever I make a video, expect fanboys to show up, insult me, and say that I've never played football, I don't know nothing about football, and that a secret like that would have leaked by now, and there would be every player who's ever been cut would come out and tell the secret. So that's a favorite thing of fanboys is like they can't all be in on it because somebody would tell the secret. And so that's where I go to the contract. If you want to make $1 million, you're going to sign this confidential agreement. And if you break it, they can legally come after you and everything they've ever paid you. You know what I'm saying? And so I can see why if you sign a contract, it's as thick as a phone book, and it has like an agreement that you can't talk about the inner workings of the business. It would be no different than if you were working on a movie. You can't go tell everybody what fucking happens in the movie before it comes out, right?
That's actually a good
You're working
analogy
on a movie.
because people will say there's too many people in on it. It's like no, they compartmentalize the knowledge, just like they do in
Yeah,
movies.
and so I have to explain this to fanboys who just attack me. The guy telling them it's fake. And so it's tough because NFL fans are like so ignorant. They're like some of the most ignorant, stupid sheep that you could ever talk to. They care more about their team than they do anything else in life. So it's the last thing that they're grasping onto. They don't care who's the president. They don't care about much in life, but their football team is, oh my God, it's their thing. So then when you destroy it, they have nothing left. You know what I'm saying?
I understand it too.
That,
You're like news is rigged.
fanboys will the hatred is like vitriol, like just as bad as any time that you tell somebody the truth about something and they don't want to hear it. So
Oh yes, it's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. We often say this, and I've seen this to be the case where they have this emotional attachment to it. You're trying to tell them the truth, and now you're the bad guy. It's just a repeated theme here with any uncomfortable truth. But with sports in general, it's like they think, and I understand this, they think the news is boring and politics is corrupt, but sports is objective. They've played sports growing up. It's just physical work and athleticism. And that's a big ruse. It's not an escape from the real world. It's not an escape from anything at all. In fact, it's just deeper immersion. And you see every Super Bowl how important it is in the psychological warfare. In just
the fans fall in love with these players to where it's like this fantasy love affair of men like, oh, this guy's so good. I'm going to buy his jersey and wear it. Like a grown man wearing another man's name on his back. Like to me, that's like oh my God, you're like a child. Like you have the brain of a child if you want to wear like a quarterback's name. I want to wear Tom Brady's name on my back because I love Tom Brady so much. I'm going to buy a Tom Brady jersey. Let everyone know I like him. You know, it's like that's shit that I did when I was a kid. I idolized players, you know, ball players. What does a ball player do? They hold on a ball, they throw it, they bounce it. Wow, so fucking amazing. We should all idolize them, and they should be rich and live in gigantic houses because they bounce a ball. When you really think about grown men idolizing dudes who like run around in like tights, you know, playing grab ass and playing with balls, and they're like, oh, that guy's so good. I have him on my fantasy team.
Well, look, I could respect it. I could respect it if it was just sheer athletics and we weren't looking at some rigged psychological operation that's designed to keep us in some kind of hive mind. But yeah, and we're looking at probably erotomania, and it is unhealthy. There's a lot of unhealthy attachments to celebrities, and that's part of what defines this whole system. I'm still blown away by the QAnon people who are infatuated with their fantasies about the Kennedys. Like this is like worse than people worshiping the royal family, the queen and the king and all this stuff. This is just like fan fiction run amok.
Oh, that's a whole nother level of tardism, the Trumpers, you know. So, yeah, trying to get through to a Trumper that he's an actor on a world stage is like the same thing as trying to tell like a hardcore sports ball fan that their team is the Harlem Globetrotters and they're just pretending. It's like beating your head against the wall, man.
Well, you may remember when,
So,
if you try to say that Alex Jones was a shill, a lot of people would attack you over it. Now everybody accepts it. That's just the price
yeah.
of being a few years ahead of stuff. Like just the other day, Joe Rogan actually had to say that he actually confronted the nukes being fake thing. And I'm like, why is he mentioning this now? The nukes are fake theory's been around for some time, but what do you think about that? Do you think that we're looking at attempts to
Yeah, I don't
defuse?
think there's a such thing as a world-ending bomb or any of that shit, or that there's somebody with a button that they could fucking, and you know, if they press theirs, we'll press ours, and then Armageddon. No, I don't believe none of that for a second. But I did, before I forget. Do you have the ability to bring up a mainstream news clip if I tell you what to search and what clip? Can you bring up a mainstream news clip?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I want you to search because this one's one, Tim, that I think you might see it you might see eye to eye with me finally after all these years. So I want you to type in Sacramento aerial mosquito spray in Google, and it should be the very first mainstream news report. So Sacramento aerial mosquito spray.
Okay, I see it.
And there's a
I,
2.5 minute report. And if we just watch that, I want you to watch it and hear what they say and the verbiage used. And then we're going to talk about how if they're spraying mosquito spray, admittedly, out of a plane above our heads, then now you have to admit that there is a chemical that can be sprayed out of a plane over your head. And you might even have to admit we're being sprayed like bugs. But watch the news report first. Before we go there, you got to watch the news clip.
Okay, I'm actually here at the Sacramento Mosquito Vector Control District. Yeah, here's what I want to know, because I do have very specific questions. For example, it says the material used for aerial spraying has been registered by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency since 1959. Now, what I want to know is this, because if I'm going to entertain the possibility that there's a spray in the contrails or it is a spray, I need to know the possibility of spraying the volume they spray. Like I want to know what kind of coverage they get and how much goes into it, just to see if it's even in the realm of, you know, being even a practical possible thing. But let me go ahead and get the article from CBS, aerial spraying for mosquitoes. There's a lot of articles here. I'm not sure which one to grab.
You show that the quick news report, they do show a truck spraying shit, and then they show a plane, and then they say there'll be aerial spraying. So the news is telling the people at home that they're going to spray in the Sacramento area for mosquitoes, and they don't go into detail exactly like, how much they're going to lay down or this, that, or the other. But yeah, that one right there.
Okay, I
The one
found it
you have
here.
up
I
on
found it.
screen.
Okay, the spray will occur 12,000 acres. All right, I'll go on. But anyway, let me go and play this clip here. So this is just dropped, it looks like yesterday. So this is a news
Yeah,
story.
I saw it on the news at my family's house. My family had on the fucking mainstream news, and I saw this, and I was like, oh, I'm doing a video about this for sure. And then I thought, you know what? I think Tim needs to see this because the mainstream news is saying, we're spraying mosquito killer on your heads. Then, well, who the fuck knows what they could be spraying?
Okay, well, I'm gonna play this.
Who knows what?
I'm gonna play this because one of my main disputes.
It's mainstream news. You won't get any sort of strike or anything for it.
Okay, I'm gonna play this clip. It's 2 minutes long.
Far have helped mosquito populations boom, and with them some concerns about West Nile. Now vector control busy fighting the bite, as they say, from the skies. They'll be doing aerial spraying this weekend in Davis and Woodland.
Yeah, they sure will be. CBS 13's Sade Brown joining us live from Sacramento YOLO Vector Control with what you need to know, Sade.
That's right, guys. And lakes like these right behind me next to a neighborhood can cause concern and a breeding ground for mosquitoes. And the mosquitoes are in full force this year. Our record-setting wet winter and now hot summer has officials warning people to avoid mosquitoes amid a spike in West Nile virus detection. West Nile virus can cause fever, headache, and rash. In severe cases, it can cause paralysis or even death. Now, Sacramento officials are stepping up their battle against mosquitoes, moving from ground spraying to aerial spraying, one of the most effective ways to treat the areas. The Sacramento YOLO Mosquito and Vector Control plans to conduct aerial spraying over Davis and Woodland this weekend.
So we had been doing continuous ground spraying in both of these cities over the last few weeks, but we needed to elevate our efforts because those efforts were no longer enough. We continue to see high abundance of mosquitoes, and those mosquitoes are infected with West Nile virus.
The district explained the two cities are surrounded by agricultural areas producing hundreds of thousands of mosquitoes.
Our traps are catching those mosquitoes night after night.
Neighbors in the Elk Grove area have seen aerial spraying before.
It doesn't bother me any. I mean, we haven't had any issues with it when it happens, but they do usually recommend staying inside.
I feel like they should just go more where the concentration's at. Yeah, because it's still an airborne, chemical. We don't know what's going to happen.
But should it be a concern for the public? And do you need to leave the area during the aerial spraying?
Yeah, that sounded like a conspiracy theorist.
According to the CDC, the answer is
you
no.
see what I'm saying? Like, they're using West Nile virus, mosquito. So guess what? We get to fucking lace you with God knows what. So Tim, if you were to, think, okay, they're openly admitting that they're spraying mosquito killer, is that all that they're spraying? Are we sure that that's all they're spraying? Are we sure it's safe? It's like, how many people are going to be like, hey, let me see an ingredient. I'm going to test this shit right now. If that one of those trucks drives by and is spraying that shit, who's going to fucking approach it and be like, hey, give me a list of ingredients that you're spraying out of the back of that truck. So if they're spraying out of the back of trucks and planes, like, I live in this area, where they're talking about. So
Do you think they're lying about do you think they're lying about the mosquitoes? I mean, or exaggerating just to justify?
Yes. So I think that they can and have sprayed people with God knows what whenever they've wanted, and that now they can just find like effective ways to just fucking to admit it. You see what I'm saying? So it's like saying, oh, we're thinking of trying to cure global warming by spraying some metallic material in the air, perhaps, so that it reflects sunlight. It's like, I think they already do that shit. They're just telling us that they're going to come up with they need all these other reasons to spray. So I think this sounds like there's something there. If they're admitting that they're spraying mosquito poison,
Well, this
you
is
know
certainly
what I mean?
this is certainly a good thing to consider in this conversation about chemtrail versus contrail, because if we're asking, is it even possible to use this as a deployment tactic? Is it something that's even used? And here we actually have an example of how, actually, if they want to spray us, they actually could. So that is actually something worth considering, because I don't like taking things for granted. And I really question how good of a tactic that would be if they wanted to dump stuff on us. And here they say, well, from the ground, it's not enough. We got to do it from up high. very interesting content. I mean, a link there. I'm glad you brought that up. I will consider it. Like, I'm certainly not closed-minded about it, but
yeah, I just wanted us to find some sort of ground where it's not just like I'm conspiracy theorists who took the contrail or bait, whatever. It's like when I see stuff like this, it's like if they're saying they can kill mosquitoes with mosquito poison that they spray aerially, well, use your imagination. That means they can spray God knows what and say, oh yeah, that's part of the mosquito deal. You know what I'm saying? So
interesting bit of
the apparatus.
Yes.
They're saying that the apparatus does exist. So if you say there is no apparatus in which a plane can spray anything, well, the news at least is saying that they do have apparatus to spray mosquito poison, and they're already doing it. And so we don't have any way to object to this. It's just like, okay, I guess they're just going to drive down the street with trucks and spray, and apparently it's spray aerially, and whether they get rid of the mosquitoes, I haven't noticed any mosquitoes or had any problems with them. So it's just I think it's fake shit. And I don't believe a mosquito carries West Nile and makes me sick. So I think all that's fake.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the public doesn't know, obviously, and so they will see this story and they'll say, "Oh, they're dumping chemicals in the sky, but thank God it's going to save us from the West Nile virus that could paralyze and kill us." So if they sell it to them as a necessary cure. Now,
so there you go. I wanted you to see that clip. So that was my main point of calling in, but I totally went off on the NFL for like 20 minutes before that.
Oh no, that's one of the things that has really boosted your channel recently, and it's worth checking out. I think people need to look at it because NFL, like I said, is a cornerstone of the mass mind control, bread and circus operation here. So it's very important to call that out. Anyway, definitely appreciate the call, and call back anytime.
All right, I'll be listening on my end. Have a good stream.
Likewise, thanks. All right, everyone, that was Jake the A-hole calling in about this, which we will have to add this into our future conversations about the contrail versus chemtrail dilemma, debate, discussion. And what I aim to do here is clarify because there's information covered in disinformation, and you have to be able to separate the two. And that's what we're working on here. Now, Benton in the chat says he takes care of the mosquitoes with vinegar. Yeah, I just think if you boil vinegar, it'll make the mosquitoes go away in your neighborhood. Isn't that how it works? Or does that only work on chemtrails? We'll have to ask Crow777. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Going through your comments, Diana South says the government pushes solar power, then blocks the sun. See, I don't believe that they can do what some people think they can do regarding geoengineering, blocking the sun. I don't think Bill Gates can block the sun, but I think they want you to believe it. And I still think there's some ulterior motives here. Like, for example, if they can get you to believe in geoengineering, the idea that man is changing climate, well, they got you on Team Greta, which is the opposite of where you want to be if you value freedom. The World Economic Forum has ruled that freedom is unsustainable. That's pretty much the bottom line, based on the premise that man is destroying the world. So I reject the premise, I reject their religion of global warming, but then you have the people who see through the global warming hoax glomming onto, but they're geoengineering us. And I'm just saying it gets you to accept a faulty premise if you take it that far. So I'm trying to avoid that, but we can't rule out the idea that there's something else going on. And then one other point too, the spraying, like the notion that the plane is spraying something at 20,000 feet or whatever, it may not be the right term to use. Like, what are they spraying? Because what you're seeing with the hot jet exhaust in the cold air does create these trails. Does it necessarily preclude an additive or something else? No. But it's just important to make a distinction, because I'm asking questions about the volume of substance it would take to trace lines across the sky for hundreds of miles. Jim Kowalski says low-flying planes to spray, not high up, more like crop duster. Right, which would make a lot more sense than commercial airlines. And then, I mean, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but if I was going to use some kind of covert spraying, like we'll just say crop duster, something that perhaps goes over urban areas, and I wanted to conceal it, I would probably misdirect people and say, hey, look, those trails from the commercial airplanes are poisoning us. And if I'm pointing at condensation trails, then I can be debunked. And now the stuff that was dropped by the other things is not being called out or isolated. Lord Dorkington has joined. He says, when we were kids, we purposefully breathed in the mosquito truck ejaculate. I get very few mosquito bites. It must have worked. You've been inoculated. All right, let's see here. My Third Eye says no virus has ever been isolated and purified, let alone proven to be contagious. Well, mind viruses are contagious. Hypochondria spreads like a panic. But I agree with you on that whole premise. And I think this is the thing about it, and I talk about this quite often, that the old religious mind control systems that have governed mankind have used the concept of sin to separate the saved from the unsaved, to put people into de facto quarantines from the sinners, and to systematize their upbringing so that they can be raised appropriately in the context of their worldview. So in other words, I think the idea of sin and its regulation is really about controlling the individuals. And that older system, which revolved around the idea of sin being contagious, moral panic, social contagion, wicked people spreading wickedness, and the need to be, virtuous and avoid the sinners, the vice. I think that is still attractive to those who have traditional values and those who look back at tradition as the way we should go for the future. But for the rest of society that's moving towards this globalism, they reject traditional religions and they've been given a new replacement one. And in this new replacement religion, they've replaced the construct of sin with the virus. And this allows them to similarly divide society into the saved and unsaved. This time, it's not between those who reject the church and those who accept it, but those who reject the media and those who accept it. Because you'll notice there's a correlation between belief in mainstream media and the vaccination. There's going to be a direct correlation. The vaccinated are going to be the most mediated, is my point. And if you think about it, if there weren't any media outlets, the pandemic wouldn't have spread, which is an important consideration. Like, let's say there was some kind of global blackout, so-called global blackout for the year 2020. Do you think everybody would be dead? You think they wouldn't have mitigated it? No, it wouldn't have spread because it spread through the media. Okay, I'm going through some comments here. Linda Curtis says, bats eat mosquitoes. Yeah, well, the bat virus thing was one of our first, I think one of the first clues that we were looking at basically a reset. The whole Batman movie with the burning bat was like this Phoenix replacement. They used these various stand-ins for the Phoenix, but the bat was going to somehow be a catalyst. And I think that's what we're still living through. This whole great reset was catalyzed by this thing. But the bigger picture here is what they did is they introduced, through this pandemic thing, they introduced a global religion where now everybody believes in it, because they couldn't do this with global warming. They can't force everybody to believe in global warming as much as they would like to, and they can't get people to just lock down for the climate because there's still resistance, because it's harder to prove. It's harder to make Gaia perform as a crisis actress. It's harder to fake wide, like for example, you look at the coastlines, like why aren't we underwater yet? It's a little more difficult, and the global warmists have continually been called out on their prophecies not coming true. But the virus was an easier sell, far more difficult to resist, a ubiquitous acceptance. And one of the things that has always been a common theme with this one world order idea was a unifying threat, something that affects everybody. Climate does that. but again, it's a hard sell with obvious agendas behind it. But I think the virus thing, the pandemic, was very easy to sell everybody on at once. So it was the true unifier. In other words, the angry globe god wasn't a strong enough or a dominant enough force to unify everybody, but the COVID devil did the trick. And I described the globe as a God construct, like a replacement for the biblical God, for those who are more utopia, great reset oriented. But the COVID is a devil that the atheists will believe in. And again, virus is the sin update. And these things are equally fake. They're equally fake. Like there may be a heaven, there may be an afterlife, but you can't definitively tell me which religion can perfectly describe it. And in the same way, space is another one of these utopian constructs they put out there that nobody's really been to. But everybody believes in space. So like I might not believe in the Muslim heaven, they might not believe in a Catholic heaven, the atheists don't believe in heaven, but all of them believe in space. So in the last 3 years, we have actually lived through the implementation of the one world order religion. I mean, that it is there. It is official. Everybody's underneath it. Even though some people are bitter clingers to their Bibles and their traditions, that's going away. And I think one of the ways that they're going to get rid of it is they're going to destroy it through destroying the controlled opposition movements that are put there to represent it. You have these clowns like Nick Fuentes, America First, espousing these ideas that are meant to call back to a more traditional era. You know, they're talking about traditional wives getting married at 16, no more voting. They're putting these ideas out there to totally turn people off of anything but progressivism. Because there's no one representing true limited government conservatism. That's been destroyed. So any hope of salvaging anything that was great or possibly great, no, it's all burning. Willow's Trees Wing says, look up anthropogenic climate change. Yeah, that's the big hoax, if you ask me. The idea that there's a debate over whether or not man affects it, I think that's the thing they want. That's the faulty premise. Kate Emma says, huge amount of psychological manipulation and brainwashing by MSM helped put most in the convid trance. It wouldn't have been possible without the celebrities and all these influencers driving it. And I think one of the primary drivers of the spread of the pandemic was, in fact, fashion. And I think there's a fascinating correlation between fashion and groupthink and fascism. And if you think about religious garments and how they spread groupthink and how they establish uniformity in thought. Like if you've joined the military, you know about how they de-individualize the trainees, strip them of their individual wardrobes and haircuts. Everybody's just a bald, scared cult member in a uniform that walks in step with one another. They speak in unison. That's what they did in 2020. And I think the mask has a psychological effect of effacing, and they say, don't be selfish, put on your mask. It's about getting the individuals to sacrifice for the good of the collective. And I think ultimately that's what the pokey was. It's a blood pact. Like if you join a cult, like a Wiccan cult, you got to sign your name in blood or something. Yeah, that's the same premise. A gang initiation, a communion. That's the premise behind and that's why people were doing vaxies, where they do a selfie while they're getting it. It's because they're showing, look, I'm in the club now. It's a ritual. It's more about the community and the church than what's actually in the thing. I mean, the vaccine is one of the biggest red herrings of all time. But it's a signal, to signal that you're joining the club or not. And you'll notice the virtue signaling was on both sides. It's a very strong anti and pro thing. Going through some comments, Timothy Ryan says, military industrial complex is 322. Coincidence? Probably not. There are some fascinating synchronicities built into this numerology, Kabbalistic relationships between words. If you don't mind, get your gematria calculator and look up PSYOP Entertainment Complex. Many people talk about the military industrial complex. Well, guess what? Most of what the military is supposedly doing is theater This is the theater of Psy-War. And so we don't need to worry about the big bombs they're buying, which are all fake. The main thing I think here isn't the military-industrial complex, but the PSYOP entertainment complex. And the way they keep everybody engaged is through entertainment. That's why I mentioned sports as being the cornerstone of the global mass mind control operation, because sports are very entertaining. If they couldn't get you to look at the screen, they wouldn't be able to control your mind. Willow Tree Swing says, Climate Global Control Trading. It's a very interesting read. Check it out. Just don't discount this. Okay, Climate Global Control Trading. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and send it? Put a link or something. You know, lately I've been finding a ton of audiobooks through an app called Hoopla. It's kind of like Audible, but it connects with your local libraries. So anything you have in your local library, ebook or audiobook, you can generally find. And someone just asked me to look at one. I think it was called Homo Deus, some transhumanist manifesto. So I am doing a lot of research these days, but I'm always busy. So if I can find it in audio, I will. And if you just post a link, we will look it up. Because I think it's very important to investigate the opposition or the opponent's positions on things to know their frame of reference. And this goes for, climate change as well as ideology, religion. Like someone had asked me about this prediction about the 8-4 attempted headshot on Trump, and they said, I don't know what to make of it, or these channels that are talking about it. And my take on it is, if you don't know their frame of reference, you may not arrive at their same conclusions, but you can still take the relevant facts that they bring to the table and try to understand them in your own context. Like there is value in disinformation and misinformation. And I find it all entertaining. Like I find CNN to be extremely entertaining, even though I know these people are so insulated that their lives are kind of a sick joke. Timothy Ryan says, how come nobody ever calls in? Actually, we've had 2 callers so far. We had Watchdog, we had Jake the A-hole. Phones are up, and we just recently started the phones again. And if I wanted to, I could probably send out a text blast and probably bring in some more calls as well. My Third Eye says Spanish flu was a hoax. Let's see here. I don't dispute that. You said the first recorded case was 3/11/1918. This is from Gematria 101. 102 years ago. 102 years before. A mirror of 201. Interesting. Someone had just pointed out that Jonas Salk, the guy that invented the vaccine, he was born on 10/28, October the 28th, which happens to be Bill Gates' birthday, which happens to be the day that Elvis Presley took a polio shot on TV. Just kind of interesting connections here. But if you want to call in, by all means do. I find the gematria stuff interesting, but I don't know if it's predictive. But I do think you can look at it as a cipher. Like there are definitely examples of this all over the place. When I was speaking with the last caller, we talked about Joe Theismann and Alex Smith and how they had these identical injuries 33 years apart. But the name Joe Theismann is one of the things that really stood out to me because I find that there's clues to the scripted nature of it in the numbers, but also in the names. Kate Emma says, most human interaction is through facial expression. Masks are used to break the resolve. The person is in fear, non-critical thinker, fight or flight. Oh, yes. And I think there's a couple elements to it. One, what I mentioned before, the fashion. You're the only person with the face. You're naked compared to everybody else. And they're all staring at you. That's intimidation. That's the use of fashion to coerce compliance with the group. And some people masked up just to get that element taken out of their lives. That's what I mean by they use fashion to spread their fascist ideology. But then second, microexpressions, facial expressions make up a lot of communication. So much of our communication that's nonverbal. And I think that the mask itself, from the day that I first saw it, I thought, you know what, this has got to be emblematic of some coming or incoming censorship agenda, because they had been using the lexicon of epidemiology to describe language for a couple of years, and we had constantly pointed this out. Like, why are wrong answers or different opinions now labeled toxic? Bad virility, toxic misinformation. Like, why are they suddenly making this happen? Well, what I figured was this, that they were going to start getting you used to the idea of mind viruses and the need to censor the public from ideas by having you live through it with a physical virus. And all of the, like, this is a long-term planning, but if you look back, the very first time that we saw safe spaces was in the universities. And the safe spaces were for progressives to be safe from conservatives. It was always a left-right thing, because the conservative ideas microaggressed them, hurt them in some way. And at first, people just tolerated it. Okay, it's just lefties being lefties with their crayons and their coloring books, let them be safe. But then what we saw in 2020 were state-mandated safe spaces, where they limited the amount of people that could associate. They made you stay 6 feet apart. So now you had a safe space because of a physical virus. So you go from a mind virus safe space to a physical virus safe space. Now, in the course of 2020, they made a clear association between the carriers of the mind viruses and the physical viruses, because they were anti-vaxxers. And they were pro-misinformation. They weren't for censorship. So now you have the same divide between progressive and the conservative, or the progressive and the traditionals, based on political lines, but they had managed to create a place in our society for censoring, or rather quarantining, mind viruses. And that's where I think we really lost touch with free speech. Timothy Ryan says, I never wore their slave mask. Well, I commend you on that. And I get flack. Like, I think Brian Stavely still calls me out on it. He's like, oh, he was selling masks. Yeah, I wasn't endorsing it as a medical device. I was selling it for a very specific reason. We were facing unprecedented censorship. And I thought, you know what? If we put COVID 1984 on a mask, nobody's going to buy it because they'll be offended by that message. The people who agree with the message don't buy masks. I put these things up for sale on many sites to occupy that space. It's advertising. That's all it is. And it's ironic, which is another part of it. But I don't think that we should be censored. And I thought, instead of letting them dominate everything, let's go ahead and stay on the game field here. And I was even selling plague masks, with the big penguin beaks. But again, it wasn't like a for-profit. It wasn't exploiting a situation. It was, in fact, doing what we always do, just responding to the climate, the mental climate. I mean, there was very little resistance. I mean, it was pretty pathetic. In fact, if you look at the way that everyone just complied, trusted the plan. I had QAnoners telling me, yeah, they're going to take out the deep state, just stay home and eat your popcorn. And now they're all fattened by popcorn and not fit for any kind of real resistance. Not to mention they've been cognitively sabotaged. It's pretty sad if you look at how the QAnon contingent of the GOP, all the true diehard MAGAs, they are lost in their own fan fiction. And they have two types of it. One, obsession with the Kennedys, and two, their obsession with Hunter Biden's laptop. And these people are like waiting for aliens. They're waiting for saviors from above. They're expecting the Pleiadians to come down and save them. Q's going to come down with this high-tech revolution for the Great Awakening. Like, they believe all this stuff. So then the government comes out and says, oh, by the way, aliens exist. And what do they say? Oh, you're just trying to distract us from Hunter Biden's laptop. I'm like, how did that happen? And how did all these people who are all about saving the children because of that Sound of Freedom movie, how did they all suddenly drop that and now get obsessed with the Barbie movie? It happened that fast. There's no attention span. There's no continuity. Kate Emma says, I never wore them and would tell friends and family how dangerous they were, not just physical health, but mental. Perhaps the most dangerous crime ever perpetrated on the human race. Yeah, I have to say that when the whole thing was happening, I had full awareness of what it was, and I knew there was no way I'm going to change anybody's mind in my life. I've already given up on that. My focus isn't on the blue pill dreamers. My focus is on salvageable red pillars who have been misguided, as well as those who have just come to the right conclusions. But I remember watching it with, it's a little depressing to see people who are in their, older relatives and family members who don't have any mental defense against this, and they're totally enraptured in the psyop. And I'm like, okay, it's just like, I guess it's just, and it was a flex by the power elite. Like, look what we can do. We can make everybody put on a dunce cap. I remember at the time saying, hey, just be thankful that they're not asking you to wear diapers, because you would have no opt-out. So in a way, it could have been worse. But was there any limit to how far it would have gone? I kind of don't think so. G33 says, I will call, but buzzing strong. Well, it's Infinite Plane Saturn Day, so that's somewhat forgivable. If you want to call in, you were right. And I haven't uploaded the archive from yesterday, but you were the one who called in and you said nothing was going to happen on 8/4. Did anything happen? No. And my criticism of some of the people who are promoting this as a prophecy is simply that in 1 year, most of their calculations aren't going to add up. They're like, oh yeah, today 8/4 is 666 days from this important event. Well, when you next year, 365 days later, it won't make as much sense. Apologize for the ringer. I meant to mute that. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Is this G33?
This is Winston Smith, 6079.
Oh, okay. Winston Smith. Okay, glad you finally got through. Winston Smith, 6079. And yeah, you've been consistently dropping some very interesting information. You said that the Spanish flu, 1918, first case, 311, which is 102 years before the pandemic of 2020.
That's super. I didn't say that. That's interesting. I didn't say that.
Oh, that wasn't you. Let me see. Okay, I thought that was yours. Oh, that was someone below your comment. But anyway, you often report on these things, these relationships. What's your basis for, like, do you use gematria calculators? Are you using the Pythagorean?
I do. I do like a Google voice search. I just heard that there's a gematria date calendar. I think it might save me some time, but yeah, I just go with an idea and I run with it. You were saying about the QAnon, and it's the Qs are still covering their face because they want to be a non with their gender therapy or whatever. That's what I used to tell people. It was Q trust the planet. It was a triple entendre. It was the Queen, the Quran, and the other Qs.
Oh, interesting. Okay, wait a minute here. Queen, Quran, because this is one of these date things. The first Q drop was 10/28, another reference that same date, 10/28/2017.
Bill Gates.
Yeah. And then 1,776 days later, the Queen dies. So the Q drops. You see?
That's super interesting. Yes. At the Super Bowl, if you don't count the end date, Rihanna was 12776 days old, and she dated a 1776er, and she was born 2176 days after him. That was interesting.
These are trippy. There was one, I think, okay, LeBron James beats Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record, 38-year record. And you dig into it, you're like, wow, he was born 38 weeks after the record was set. And there's like a whole litany of 38s connected with him.
He was 38 years old. It was the 38th day of the year. He scores 38 points to beat the record with 388 points. And this was the biggest thing. I found this, and it didn't catch on online, but exactly 38 days before LeBron was born was a different Kareem Abdul-Jabbar who also went to UCLA. It's baffling.
It is baffling. And
then And then you have on the you have on the King's coronation, the owner of the Cavs' son dies, and the Cavs' owner is born 3 days before LeBron. I don't know how that didn't catch on. I need to make videos, I guess.
Absolutely. Look, definitely. I mean, this information is intriguing in itself, but it's staggering because you're like, well, how is this being orchestrated at this level? One of the clues I think is astrology. Astrological timing is an objective marker for timing events, but some of this stuff is mind-bending. And just the other day, I watched Newsbenders from 1968 about how they write the news 5 years in advance. And the person who worked at the news agency suggested that everything was being authored by some kind of supercomputer. Did you catch that?
Yeah. I've heard you talk about that movie before. I've never watched it, but yeah, I've heard you mention that before. It sounds super interesting, and it sounds feasible. And I think that supercomputer is run by Satan, but yeah, I mean, there's no way it's a bunch of small hats sitting in a room planning. I mean, at least, and I've heard you have some great research just with the date alignments that I've found. There's no way. It's not possible.
Yeah, exactly. So if there is,
in my opinion,
if there is an AI, look, and I think there may be clues in Kubrick's work because his last movie was AI, and the monolith thing, and the smartphone. There may be something to this idea of a demiurge, and it manifesting through some type of computer. But that's just conjecture. But I mean, we're trying to figure out how the hell could you possibly coordinate this stuff.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like Timothy Ryan in the chat says, Kobe Bryant, 33, scored his career-high 81 points on his 666th game. And then he had his workout routine called the 666 routine. Some of the stuff is conscious, where you can see they're playing into it.
And so here's one I found. If you don't count the game that Jordan broke his foot, he played 666 regular season games before his dad was killed. I mean, probably a coincidence, I guess. And then Jordan is born 5,666 days before Kobe.
Yeah, and the birth dates.
And you got
wow, that's some planning. I mean, I have to wonder, like the Greta Thunberg, Kyle Rittenhouse having the same birthday. This has got to be some kind of like roles that they play for life or something.
Yeah, so the reason why I think it's, and so then I started looking at the etymology. So like Jordan means who is like God, and Galilee means beyond Jordan. And he's known for his all-mocking tongue. He's been putting his name on people's souls since the 322nd day of 1984. I think we all know what 322 is.
And the Jordan, because I know that Jordan Neely psyop recently, I was like, there's got to be something with the name. Even the guy who directed the movies that contained predictive programming that led to that was Jordan Peele. So I thought Jordan's got to be some significant name here, as all the names are in these various psyops. But again,
Jordan Valley is good.
Well, but as
I was just going to say, Jordan Valley is where Sodom and Gomorrah is.
Okay, that would probably be the tie-in that we're looking for here. Fascinating.
So you got like Jordan owns Charlotte, and Lot's wife turned back to see Sodom and Gomorrah charred.
This could be
turned to a pillar of salt, and Jordan had his last shot in Salt Lake City, and so did Kobe, and Kobe was drafted to the Hornets, where Jordan owns now, and Hornets an anagram for throne.
Now, okay, so the Kobe thing is intriguing, of course, because he, his helicopter crashes. He had a commercial he did where his helicopter explodes, and in that one, before his helicopter explodes, he's speaking to this individual in a black-rimmed cowboy hat, who I think is the devil. But the thing is, he blows up on 1/26/2020, which is the same week as the Challenger explosion, Apollo 11, and the same week as the Columbia disaster. So there's a lot of airborne, fiery immolation deaths that particular week. So I thought it was kind of curious that Kobe's took place at the same time, and they buried him in Corona del Mar. And this is right before the whole Corona thing took off.
Exactly. And so the thing I made, it's Revelation 3:11, let no man take your crown, because your cells have what's called a protein corona, so you're not supposed to let them infiltrate your DNA. Well, he dies on 1/26, like the 1,260 days of the first half of Revelation. Jordan's first game is 10/26, drop the 0, it's 1/26. George Bush Sr. is born at 12-6 in the rest of the world. I got to bet, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's too much of a far fetch, but
No,
I think they're trying to point to something.
they really are. The crown thing is very curious about right there as well, because I think the crown, the corona, obviously, it's one of these recurring themes, but we're talking about the decision to comply or not, which is ultimately the decision to stand on your own as an individual or to allow yourself to be deposed and to give away your free will. And I think the crown and the free will are closely connected here, and it all has to do with the choice. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, this is, again, we're talking about the numbers, the dates between things, and whether predictive programming can be a predictive model, which is, I think it can be, and I think it often does predict more or less what's coming. And recently, there's been a lot of stuff relating to the nuke, the Oppenheimer, and I've been wondering, there's got to be something coming up with that. And so we come across like the
I know that was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. But I think there's something to it, and I've been thinking recently, maybe the nuclear bomb, because in Newsbenders, in this play I mentioned, they say they started faking everything in the news with the advent of the nuke. And I thought, well, maybe this is the key here. Maybe when they faked us with the nukes, they convinced us these were real, what they did then is they technically obliterated the real world for the masses and put us into a subjective state, which I call the dream world, where now all of our perceptions are filtered through their screen because we bought the premise. And then the nuke itself, it basically kind of blew our minds. It blew our cognitive, it was like a cognitive bomb, and it just disconnected us from reality. And now the geopolitics change, and all of our leaders can blow us up at any minute. So it pretty much turned the elite into gods and us into subjects.
Yes. Oh, I agree completely, yeah.
And, interestingly, today I was walking by and I saw this person with a shirt from the band Sublime, and it had a sun, and the sun had a face. And over the face was a mushroom with the mushroom on the top of the crown of the face. And it was shaped like a mushroom cloud. So you have a combination of corona, the mushroom, like the mind blowing, and then the actual nuke blowing up, all in one symbol.
Yeah. I like that. So you got, here's a bit of a stretch, but you got Mario is released the same day as Event 201, a couple, 30-something years before. Mario has its last level 8-4, like Obama's birthday. It has Operation Warp Speed Tunnel, so it's a bit of a stretch. And on one of the Mario games, it has Super Mario's has Mount Corona as the last level. And then the last bad guy's Bowser, like for the crown.
Interesting.
I'm not bowing to the crown, but you know what I mean.
These can't be coincidences. Like okay, so Greta comes out and makes herself famous, and then people notice, wait, Greta looks exactly like Saint Corona, and you have the Saint Corona character with the long braids, and then you have this Disney character Rapunzel with the same hair, and she's quarantined on Corona Island. I mean, these are just
that's phenomenal.
And these are things that were
I've never heard that.
Probably written before she even took on that. What I'm saying is, it's like, yeah, these are pre-existing roles. And we talk about Musk a lot, and clearly Elon Musk is right out of the book by Werner von Braun, that being Mars, A Technical Tale, about the Elon taking over Mars and all this. So it's like, I kind of think that we're privy to the script on many levels here, but whether it's written by an AI or a big writing department, I kind of think it doesn't matter. And I'm trying to shy away from. But anyway, I wanted to, if you can, comment a little bit more on why you think it might be Satan.
Just the movie I Pet Goat. He's wearing the S ring. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that short video on YouTube. I recommend watching it. It's got a lot of things that's happening at the Notre Dame Cathedral, the Seattle Space Needle, which didn't get attacked, but we had the Seattle, and then we had the needles they were trying to push out of Seattle. With that, it's got Trump in it, but he's pulling the strings in there, and so here's I Pet Goat, and Jordan is the goat, and from Jordan's birth to the release of that is 18,025 days, and that's the zip code of Bethlehem. And I feel like I know somebody who's from Bethlehem.
Interesting.
Jesus.
Interesting. Okay, now, no, this is all. I mean, like the Space Needle is consciously designed to represent a UFO and a tractor beam, and I connected it with the symbol of the obelisk, which the rockets also represent. But I think the Space Needle in Seattle specifically represents the Tower of Babel. Space is heaven. The tower reaches to the heavens, and Doctor Evil, who looks exactly like Jeff Bezos, and Jeff Bezos laughs like him now, had his headquarters in a Space Needle. And so I've been connecting this because I think that Jeff Bezos on the world stage represents the builder of the Tower of Babel, Nimrod.
He definitely built quite an empire, and they make it sound like he's kind of just not really done anything. Like, oh, he's not the richest anymore, or whatever. He's not doing good things. Yeah, I love that breakdown.
And it goes deep. I have an article about this because it was like in Virginia a couple of years ago, they greenlit his plans to build what they call the Amazon Helix building. And they said, it looks just like the Tower of Babel. It's this big spiral tower. And then you go on and you find there are other things about him that I think signify this, as all these characters play these important roles. But interestingly, Nimrod builds the tower, then there's a flood, and he builds one of the first civilizations post-flood. So I'm thinking, if there is a big reset, who's going to be at the foreground of rebuilding? Obviously, Bezos is in that group of people.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it was, 6-7 years ago, we were supposed to be having drone deliveries. They're still building those drones. They're just not going to be delivering good things to us. I think it's going to be the plague of locusts. They're just going to be like robotic.
Interesting.
This is my thought on it. At the time when Kobe died, he was the richest person. On the day Kobe had his first game, he was 11984 days old. I don't know what that means, but it seems like 1984.
Well, on the topic of Satan, or I think there's a lot of syncretisms.
Okay, here, I got a good Satan one. So they're called ley lines. So, because when you lay down, you lie down. And Stan means land of. So it's Stan Lord, landlord. So he's the Lord of this land, if that makes sense. Because Stan means land of, and the Lord, landlord. He's Lord of this land, Lord of this world, and he's mentioned he's, the 44th president. 2 Corinthians 4:4 is the Lord of this world.
Well, Baal, as in the earth god symbolized by the obelisk, Baal means Lord. And everything seems to refer back to this. And so, for example, the names, Saturn, Moloch, Osiris, they all seem to reference the same thing. And I've been pointing out for some time that we're talking about, the Grim Reaper, agrarian archetype, and the number 42, which I'm consistently seeing in PSYOPs connected with this idea. If you combine 4-2, you get the astrological symbol of Saturn. And my point being, Kobe dies and he's 41 years old. But on his 42nd birthday, the NBA had what they called Black Mamba Week. So for the entire Black Snake Week or Black Mamba Week, they're all wearing 42s. Coincidentally, the MLB is all wearing 42s for Jackie Robinson, which they normally do in April. But they did it at the same time that the NBA was wearing 42s because COVID caused them to move it. Yep.
And then after COVID, both the MLB and the NBA both came out with a 113-page coronavirus rule book. You can Google it. It's the weirdest fucking thing. I think a 42, like 42 is DB, like a defensive back. Like you better guard your rear because it's the key to the universe lies in the 42 degrees of a rainbow, and it's the reign of BO, the flaming Ouroboros, the feather boa, Obama. He's flaming.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not politically correct. I don't care to be. Sorry.
Well, it's not even about that. It's about the fact is they do use words that convey multiple meanings, and oftentimes they're very punny. And I think that's also because they communicate to us at a subconscious level, and the dreaming subconscious mind, I think, gets a lot of this stuff. But there's no doubt that there was a coordinated effort to saturate the mass consciousness with that sign, that symbol, that number 42. And I think it all pertains to this earth god. This Saturn, the idea of Saturn being the lord of the earth, and ultimately, but rituals in plain sight, and the 113-page thing, that's just unbelievable again because 113, that number, that date is just encoded into all these same things. In fact, Pixar puts 113 in all their films, and people are like, "What does that number mean?"
Yeah, it didn't used to be in Monsters Inc., and I'll argue till my death for that. Maybe it's Mandela, call it what you want. It didn't used to be in there, because I remember when the post was first made and somebody broke down all the Disney movies, it wasn't in there. But yeah, Kobe dies 479 weeks, 3 days after his 437 weeks, 9 days after his first NBA game, and that's the 666 prime. And then so from the release of Monsters Inc. until Eminem's The Monster is 4379 days. And when I first did this breakdown 43 years ago in '79, because I did this last year, the Seattle Supersonics won their only championship, and their best player, even though he didn't win the MVP's last name was Sigma, and Seattle's first stadium was called Sick Stadium. And Seattle and Kobe are sister cities, and Kobe founded in 201 AD, like Event 201. Because I think their plan, and I've heard you talk about it before, they were going to blow up Seattle on November 3rd, 2019.
Right. I was like, we were actually watching live in Seattle. There were 3,000 of us watching the Space Needle because we thought they were going to blow it up based on predictive programming. Like, this is an experiment for us.
Yeah.
Like, let's all watch and see what happens. And the thing is, this is the strangest thing. We're watching the Seattle Space Needle. There's 3,000 of us. And then in Turkey, a massive Space Needle blows up. Huge fire, international news. And I'm like, what just happened here?
Oh, wow.
You can look it up. You can find
Well, I did not know that. Wow.
And I thought, okay, did we distract an important ritual and they had to do it somewhere else? Did we screw up their plan? I hope not. But
I called everywhere in Seattle before that happened, because I just started getting into this stuff that I'm in now right before it happened, and I have relatives and friends there. I called the Space Needle. I called all kinds of I called news stations, and I'm like, this is going to happen. I'm like, it's not me that's going to do it, but it's all over the internet. Look it up. I'm not saying I stopped it, but I tried to.
okay, now another thing about that number 113, it pertains to this. There's this History Channel series, and I think it's one of them was episode 113, the bombing of Seattle. And I was referencing this because that was a drill they did decades ago in Husky Stadium for Seattle getting bombed. I've referred to this many times, and they pulled the link. Episode 113, bombing of Seattle. It turns out Husky Stadium is where the wave started. You know, the wave that they do in sports.
Oh,
and now the connection is this, though. Last year, or a year and a half ago, Amazon relocated almost 2,000 employees away from downtown Seattle. They said it was because of a, quote, crime wave. Shortly after, they were doing drills for a tsunami hitting Seattle, a 42-foot a tsunami wave hitting Seattle. So I'm saying, interesting here. They use the excuse of a crime wave, and then they do simulations of a real wave in this now empty area. And I'm thinking, that's where the wave started. Is there going to be some kind of a nuke underwater? You know, like the Poseidon weapon that the Russians have. That's kind of my guess.
Super interesting. I was just thinking in my head, I think 42 feet, 444 inches. I don't know what that means, but yeah, that's super interesting. And so UW is where Bill and Melinda Gates have their biologic disease thing, and it's also right next to Bothell, Washington, which is like wordplay for bot hell, because DARPA's headquartered there, and they've been building, and you can look it up on the internet, they've been building 5G killbots, having contests with just regular people and engineers since like 2004, a 5G killbot building contest. Doesn't sound nefarious at all, though.
5G killbot. Yeah, it sounds like...
Yeah, look it up. 5G killbot building contest. And then Bothell's home to 16,000 crows, and a large group of crows is called a murder.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It is. It's called a murder. You know what a large group of penguins is called?
No.
A raft.
A community?
A raft.
A raft?
Yeah, and look,
okay.
I've been saying that we're right now adrift in the sea of irrelevance. That's the nature of the world stage today, but the IPS is like a raft. And I'm thinking that the Auto Hoaxer 101 textbook will be like a flotation device for anybody trying to get some semblance of what is real and what is fake.
Yeah.
It's needed. I think that we are, and those of us who are paying attention and are making these connections, what we're really pointing out here is that there is an order in the seeming chaos here. And to me, it just implies that there's an orchestrator behind it all. And it has to be monolithic. Otherwise, things like 9/11, COVID, or any of this stuff would just simply not be possible.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's one person calling all the shots, I think, and then they got their minions under their one-eyed minions with the one-eye symbolism, doing their dirty work for him.
Yep, for the all-seeing, what I call it now, the all-seeing camera lens.
Yeah, perfect.
But hey, I appreciate the call very much. Call back anytime, and I definitely.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime. I appreciate it, Tim. Can I shout my channel real quick? Not that anybody cares.
Yeah, please shout it out and post a link if you like.
I can't. Oh, yeah. I got 6079 Smith W. I only do community posts. You might find them interesting. Appreciate you guys' time. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you.
God bless.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to take the caller's channel and I will put that in the notes. And any other caller, if you have a channel like EOTR, our first caller watchdog, I'm going to definitely be putting links so individuals can follow them as well. Elephant Tusk says, I hate Instagram influencers. Yes. There's that cover from 2017, Winter Solstice, of The Economist, and it says, the new shape of Chinese influence, sharp power. And it has the globe covered in spikes, but it's red where China is, and it looks like a COVID ball that hasn't been fully covered red yet. When I saw that, I said, okay, wait, look. The new shape, novel shape. The new shape of Chinese influence, Chinese influenza, flu. Just another connection between influence and influenza and mind viruses and how they treat ideas and how they spread through society and why they want to hyper-regulate it. We're living in something of a holy war, and their aim is just total purity of their doctrines, their worldview, and they're getting rid of non-canonical texts, getting rid of the blasphemers, and what would we be? Heretics? Infidels? Apostates? Probably apostates. Remember John LeBon, johnlebon.com, he had that show, The Apostasy Show? Because we really are, in a way, apostates from the world state church. If you look at mass media writ large as a religion, and if you're in a religion and you break free of it or you see through it, you're generally denounced, but you're considered to be an apostate, like a defector, a deserter. Hellbound reprobates or disinformationists, or today, in today's parlance, you're a conspiracist. Do you remember you used to be a conspiracy theorist, but they said that makes them sound smart, like they know what theories are. Let's call them conspiracists. And that went down without a hitch. They all just suddenly started using that term. I'm like, okay, that's very slick. Okay, I have a quote here from Donald Trump. If you go after me, I'm coming after you. I have a quote here from Al Capone, February 1929. If you go after me, I'm coming after you. Trump may not even know. He's just, I think, an actor in many ways here, but I don't think any of them know the basis for a lot of the things that they say. Like Jason Aldean's song, Try That in a Small Town. He didn't know, or at least pretends not to know, but his listeners certainly did not know, that the song and the video had some very specific connotations, given the location and the wording that suggested something about lynching. And it would be kind of dishonest to say that wasn't the case, but they're maintaining it wasn't the case. And I don't think they have plausible deniability. Yes, Elephant Tusks, the judge took that statement as a threat. This statement that Trump made, in all caps, is protected political speech. At least that's going to be their argument. But we'll see. They may use this as an excuse to pull him in. Look, the 8-4 prophecy about Trump taking a hit, it's like, I don't know about the dates, but the people looking into it who are correlating all these bits of predictive programming, they have arrived at a pretty clear picture. Something is going down. There is a reason why Trump was arraigned on 4/4, the 55th anniversary of MLK's assassination, and that later he gets compared to Moses. Ooh, Timothy Ryan points out, Jason Aldean is 33. he was playing during the Vegas PSYOP in 2017. I'm going to name some religious and cult leaders and political leaders and agitators, and in the chat, mention if you want to go ahead and just put in the chat their names as I mentioned. Their ages. It's just kind of a test. For example, how old was Joseph Smith, founder of the Mormon Church, when he was tarred and feathered and martyred? Second question, how old was Dave Koresh when he was incinerated for the weapons violations there at Waco? How old was Dave Koresh? How old was Timothy McVeigh when he was electrocuted after the attacks inspired by the Turner Diaries? By the way, the Turner Diaries, the author of the book The Turner Diaries that inspired McVeigh, he was born on 9/11, 1933. McVeigh was executed on 6/11 at the age of, 33. You got it. QAnon shaman, when he stepped into the Capitol with his spear, how old was he? I mean, you just go down the list. I could go on endlessly. I've been saying for some time, we need to just go ahead and quarantine the 33-year-olds. Just for 1 year, let's have a year of peace. Probably not a coincidence that the Masonic Order's 33rd degree motto is order out of chaos, because it seems like that's their MO. They need chaos agents, and then they establish their own order. Speaking of chaos agents, I think that's what Joker represents. Like Joker, Sarnath, the Boston bomber, had his death penalty reinstated on March 4th, 2022, the same date that the Batman movie came out. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? The Sarnath Joker character, same day as the Batman movie. Like they use these as, indicators, but on 4/4, the date that Trump was arraigned, Heath Ledger would have turned 44. And on the same day, the Joker movie was actually being filmed by that courthouse. And they had some 700 actors participating in a riot. But since then, and that was Holy Week, where Trump was definitely being compared to Christ, since then, he's been elevated or promoted from Christ to Moses. And I think next is apotheosis. I think next he gets full-blown, God status. But look at this tweet here. If you're looking at the screen, it's from a Twitter account called Try That in a Small Town, You Filthy Liberals. Jesus and Donald Trump are the two greatest men to have ever walked the earth since the beginning of humanity. And of course, Jesus was the greatest, and that's why Jesus fully supports the second greatest man to have ever walked the earth, because Trump is the chosen one to save humanity from Satan. And here you have Jesus and Trump walking on a beach, and it says, together they will bring peace. Like, this is the kind of stuff that's spreading around, and this has 150,000 views, and it's not being viewed by people who disagree with it. Like, this is internal memos. Thousands of people are retweeting this. They see Trump and Jesus as analogous, as the same thing. And someone else sent me a picture of Donald Trump crucified on a McDonald's sign. And I don't know if Donald Trump is crucifiable. I think there are weight limits. And I think there are some problems they would run into just keeping him pinned up there. But anyway, he's basically taken on a role here where it's not even about political platforms. It's not about policy. It truly seems to be about nothing more than the cult of personality. Timothy Ryan says, Trump is an old grandmother. What a joke. I never took that seriously, other than MAGA means witch. Like magus is like a mage, a wizard. But MAGA means witch. But the grandmother thing, it didn't make sense to me. But although someone pointed out something, they said, look at all the pictures where Trump is kissing Ivanka Trump on the lips or on the cheek, where he's very close to her. And some people have pointed it out to say, hey, that's a little too close. It's gross like Biden. But looking at it again, it's like, it actually kind of looks like a motherly display of affection. When Trump interacts with his daughter, it looks like, yeah, it looks kind of, or grandmotherly is how you describe it. I'm not a big believer in transvestigationism, but some people are. And look, if you are, you have a few problems, but I'm not here to debate that particular topic. Elephant Tusk says, ever watch that show Preacher? They did an entire end of the world season right before 2020. No, I have not. Although I did see a scene that was being shot here in town. It was like a wrecked car, and it was a movie set, but I'd like to see it. I'll have to check it out because there are so many movies that led up to 2022 that predicted it and prepared you for it. Like the show Pandemic on Netflix. And again, I really think it's important to stress that predictive programming isn't some part of, it's not like a hint or foreshadowing of what they're going to do. That's not what it is. It's simply a mental rehearsal where they're building neural pathways for what they're going to fake. So again, predictive programming isn't a hint about what's to come. It's a hint about what's to be faked. And too many people lose that distinction. They think, oh, they're actually doing it, and they're rubbing it in our faces first. No, they're not even doing it, nor are they going to. Timothy Ryan says, Trump has the body of a woman. I do transvestigations. If you want to call in and talk about it, here's my primary issue with it. My primary issue is they say it's all of them. Like the top investigators in this particular realm or field, they say it's all of them. That it's every first lady, every president, that they're all chicks. And, you know, it's like there's a point where, are you telling me all football players are women and cheerleaders are men, all dogs are cats, all cats are dogs? It's the generalizing that just kills it for me. And then you have Hunter Biden comes out with his laptop, which was meant for public consumption. It's actually meant to occupy your time. You know, you can buy books. Like there's actually a print copy of his laptop. And there are 4,000 photos of a nude Hunter Biden. And yet these transvestigators say Hunter Biden's a woman. So is his dad. So is Trump. So is Donald Trump Jr. And I'm like, well, there are photos here. And they'll say, no, those photos are CGI. Or those photos are fake. Well, here's the thing. You can make that argument that photos are fake and video is fake only if you address that specific photo, that specific video. You cannot just say categorically it's all fake. You can't do that with space videos either. You don't have, I mean, it's very easy to debunk and discredit these things, but you can't make an argument that this is so without addressing it. And I can't find any that will take me up on it. And then what's more, they say, for example, Sylvester Stallone is a woman. So I send him a message and I'm like, look, here's Stallone from the 80s, late 1970s videos where he's doing a bunch of artsy nude films. And then he does full-blown adult films where you can actually see the anatomical functioning of what you're going to say is CGI. And if you're going to, again, say Sylvester Stallone's a woman, your homework tonight is to go through all these old videos and convince me, or rather present a convincing argument that you're looking at a biological woman. And none of them will do it. They block me. And I've been blocked by dozens of transvestigators. And normally what they do is they say, oh, you must be one of them. And you're covering it up. And like, if you're saying that my skull is a female skull, then you're contradicting all of your observations. And I would feel sorry for a woman with my skull. Like, it is not a female skull. I mean, you could maybe, but my point being, their whole premise is unfalsifiable. They'll say, you don't have a pronounced enough brow ridge. But if I did, they would say, that brow ridge is obviously an implant. So however you answer, you're wrong. Heads I'm right, tails you're wrong. Let's play a game. It's like, no thanks. Timothy says, a fake... Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, you can have a prosthetic, but the skeleton doesn't lie. That's their premise, that they're looking at skeletons. So they claim to be experts in what they call skeletal kinetics, like they can look at the way you walk, or they are also looking at proportionality. But the problem is they're usually using skull templates. So they'll put a skull template over your face. And this is why I don't trust them, because they put skull templates on my face and have concluded that I'm a woman. And I'm not offended by it. I'm just saying, if you're going to rest your reputation on this, I can debunk you in half a second. Now, the problem with this is, I was in a military occupational specialty called Graves Registration, or Mortuary Affairs Assistant. And so the Mortuary Affairs thing, we were stationed in Fort Lee, Virginia, and we had this thing called the Body Farm where we exhumed skeletons. We spent time training over at the Richmond Morgue, which is very busy, packed with bodies at various states of decay, homicide, suicide, bullet-ridden corpses, everything you can imagine. And one of our tasks was to be able to identify human remains. That's the whole purpose of this MOS, is they go out to places where there's supposedly bodies that haven't been recovered, and they recover them. But in the course of our research, they show you different skeletons categorized in broad categories by race. So whatever you think about race, these are just, environmental adaptations or whatever. There are distinctions in proportionality. Femur to torso, nasal passages, arm length compared to torso. And these are things that are very consistent. And the skulls in particular are not necessarily the same between these three broad categories. My point being, all these people who claim to be, and they're always anonymous on Twitter, they claim to be identifying this or that celebrity as the opposite of what they say, or Trump's a woman. They never answer my question. What skull template are you using for this actress or actor? Which skeleton are you comparing it to? There's just no nuance to it. It's not a science. It's a pseudoscience. Especially, look, the big giveaway here is that it's mostly structured like a witch hunt. It's not authentic research. But if you want to believe it, believe it. Sunrabbit says, I don't know about Hunter being a woman. He's more like a cartoon character. Yeah, I find his laptop to be unbelievable. Like, he's not the type that I would imagine would be obsessed with recording himself. His videos are unaesthetic, almost as though they created this, like it's a reality TV show. Like, hey, we need to create this scandal. Your goal is to be really disgusting and take these really, like, fake, like, they don't look real to me. Like, I auto-hoax all these mass shootings, these terror attacks. Well, if you actually look at the Hunter Biden videos, or the supposed videos, the collection of photos and everything, it kind of looks fake and staged. It's not all that, I mean, I don't know. You can look for yourself, but it looks to me like pretty phony. Like designed to create a scandal that never leads to anything. And it never will. How many years have the MAGAs been obsessing over this? I actually call them MAGA X, because many of them are now taking photos from this and adding their own material, fan fiction, creating stories. And a lot of it's just, quite frankly, it's like adult erotica. Like Hunter Biden's got his own genre of erotic fan fiction created by QAnoners. Marjorie Taylor Greene went out with a collection of Hunter Biden fanfic porn photos and showed it off for the world to see. I'm like, this doesn't convict anybody of anything. Dwayne Garrett says planted cameras, blackmail club. Could be. Look, I just think it's a contrived fake scandal. Jake the A-hole says, I don't even cover fake crap like Hunter's laptop and Trump being indicted. Good. Yeah, I mean, this stuff is obviously not going to lead anywhere. Trump being indicted is for ratings. Hunter's laptop is a recycling thing of Hillary Clinton's 33,000 leaked emails. Remember that? 33,000 leaked emails? Whatever happened to Frazzle Drip? So what I'm suggesting here is that the whole thing was just contrived and fake. And I think that it creates a lot of whataboutism. Like, oh, you're going to convict Trump, but what about Hunter? So you have these fake moral equivalencies, and they never go anywhere. Timothy Ryan says the world leaders worship Satan. Satan is a Baphomet. Look at the goat statue. See, I sort of disagree. I'm not trying to defend Baphomet, but I think it's wrong to say Baphomet is trans. Baphomet is hermaphrodite, male, female, but also trans species, or rather a chimera, because the Baphomet is man, angel, and beast, male, female, and it's really just a symbol representing this duality in all things. And this somehow, I think it's also meant to convey the idea of man as being balanced between beast and angel. And the torch is a symbol of light and knowledge over darkness. So like it's actually meant to be like something of a, I guess you would say, a totem or a hieroglyph of arcane perfection. Like it's not intrinsically negative. The Baphomet is not the devil. It's not the same thing. I don't think it's the same thing. To say that it's just somehow evil, it's like, well, not really. If you actually look at it, it's more like it's just like a collection of a lot of different symbols, but it's conveying what you would find, in alchemy and other places. I don't think it's, again, the devil. But let's look at the devil, because I think this is a worthwhile comparison. In the tarot card deck, you have a character that looks like the Baphomet. But I'm going to point out the distinctions here, because I think these distinctions are, really key to understanding what the Baphomet is and isn't. So in this case, you have the devil. Unlike the Baphomet thing, here you go, he has a torch pointed down. And in this one, you have man and woman chained to the black cube, which looks suspiciously like an iPhone or the monolith. But again, this is the devil as opposed to the Baphomet. And they're kind of opposites. This one has bat wings. Baphomet has angel wings. This one is actually showing the idea of man dominated by the material, by the flesh. That's what the inverted torch represents. Ignorance over light. The star pointed down represents the material realm over the celestial. And man and woman being chained to the black cube means bondage. And I think another element to it is they're happy. So this is man and woman happily in bondage to the world, to the devil, to darkness, to ignorance, to the bestial lower natures. This is why they have horns. They've given in to the bestial side, not the angelic. This also explains the bat wings. And then you contrast this with the Baphomet. It's kind of the opposite. I'm not saying the elite don't worship the devil or whatever, but I think it's a little more complicated than that, because they are not strictly Satan versus Jesus. If you actually look at their bigger picture, they actually have their own Christ-type deity that they venerate. They seem to be, I would almost say, polytheistic, animistic. Chained to the phone, says we. Exactly. Chained to the phone. Another thing I'd point out here, if you look at the devil, look at his hands. That's the live long and prosper sign. I think that's interesting, just because I think the space age and space, the new frontier, space has been sold to us as emptiness, blackness, nothingness, a void. And it would take generations to reach the next habitable land. So it's interesting here that he's making this gesture, and it's, again, an emblem of endarkenment as opposed to enlightenment. And when you look at a rocket going to space, which again, I think represents darkness, it's our biggest blind spot, what does it look like? It looks like an inverted torch, just like the devil's carrying. The flame on the bottom, pointing up at the darkness. So I do think that, yeah, we are being led into what the devil represents in this card, which is bondage, ignorance, and attachment to smart devices. Going through your comments, Lean Dion says, the Enterprise ship has 42 decks. And what is Musk's new rocket called? the one that had 33 engines. They might have added 9 for 42, but it was the Starship. Again, Star Trek, Starship. They even found the Star Trek logo on Mars. They found the House of Stark from Game of Thrones logo on Mars, which is interesting, again, because Tony Stark is Iron Man. House of Stark is Iron Throne. Iron is associated with Mars in this symbolic system. And Musk, the Iron Man, Tony Stark, taking us to Mars in his Starship. All of this overlaps. Louis Capiche says, I was hoping to call in about this. Yeah, by all means. Phones are open. 505-349-0420. More comments. I'm just reading through your... there's a few people have said things. Dwayne Garrett says, do as thou wilt. Yeah, if you really look at the... not the Hollywood version of Satanism, but if you look at the way that Satanism or the religion of Aleister Crowley, what they believe in, what they practice, you could make the argument that we are living in a system that is based around that particular religion, that we are living in. You could say it's a very satanic society by definition. And I think that's all been by design. We were talking about words and the way they layer meanings into things like cell phone, iPhone, iPod. All of this was, I think, leading us into, I think, this era of the atomized individual where we're all completely screened from one another. All of our interactions go through a screen. Everyone we interact with. That was one of the things that struck me about 2020 was that the only facial expressions that you see are on the TV screen. All right, catching up on comments here. If you want to call in, by all means, please do. It's on the screen there. Now, you said the Enterprise ship has 42 decks, and the number 42 is one of the pet numbers that Musk encodes into everything. But recently, he turned SpaceX, or rather, I'm sorry, Twitter into X to match his SpaceX. And I made a remark about this, that the glowing X on the former Twitter headquarters, that sign of the glowing cross, that's just more of this Constantine element to Elon Musk's persona. I've been saying that Musk is part Iron Man, part von Braun, part Willy Wonka, but a large part of his persona is based on Constantine. And the Mars program, moving us into Mars bases, is the new serfdom. You're not going to Mars with private property. It's a communism. But my point is, Constantine unites the empire under the religion, under the sign of the cross. After he has a vision of a glowing cross, Musk just had a vision of his glowing cross as he consolidates everything under X. In fact, on X, you can now live stream. I can't. My account's blocked, even though I have a blue check. I've been target blocked by Musk himself, but I can live stream on my back accounts. Yeah, the Constantine connection is something I brought up in an article called Elon Musk, the Martian Pope, and I published it in 2017, and I said, in the future, the elite are going to lock us down with fake climate change or stimulating some kind of situation to lock us down, and I suggested that in this article that Mars represents the new age, and the reason why I call Elon Musk the Martian Pope is that in Mars, A Technical Tale, Werner von Braun says that the governmental structure of Mars is going to be a papacy. So that would make Musk a pope. But then, what's more, here's what I actually wrote. Musk to be a dictator on Mars, the government based on Rome's organizational structure as scripted by von Braun, sci-fi author, Nazi, rocket scientist, and Vatican agent. The Martian colonists will live in space communes. Anyway, going on here, Musk will be seen as... Scrolling through the article, there's something here. This is the part I want to find. Climate change will be exaggerated to gain compliance for increased governmental control over the private sector and the individual. Eco-fascist measures will allow government to act as savior. This is, again, my prediction for what they were going to do. Then I was speaking about the significance of Musk, and I brought up Constantine, how Constantine was a worshiper of Mars. He practiced what they call planetary magic. So he had this Mars connection there. I got this in a Catholic encyclopedia. But what's more, Constantine was known for the conversion of the tenant farmers into serfs. And Musk is teaching or training or leading the way for propertied, free people to become communists in their Mars bases. He's part of the conditioning for it. And I had suggested that the SpaceX's logo's cross, or the X, is a cross. And it's also like the sword of Constantine. But the idea here is that, again, Constantine united the empire under the sign of the cross after having a vision of a glowing cross, which Musk put on his building. And one other thing about this that stood out to me, the X, and this whole thing with the X thing, is that the symbol of the dove has long been a symbol of the religion. So the dove and the cross are often seen together. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you have, of course, the bird and the cross. These are, again, Twitter bird to the X. A few other things. He changed the slogan to Blaze Your Glory. And this is all being done during the dog days of summer where they worship the dog star. And the dog star is called the Blazing Star. Sirius. And Sirius means glowing. So I'm just saying that this glowing cross has more to it. And it was only for the night. The city won't let him do it again. And then I juxtaposed the cross and the dove so you can see here. We're looking at something here. Something meaningful about the transition into a new consolidated one world paradigm. And Elon Musk is obviously a huge part of it because remember this, space travel is fake. The space program is not about taking you anywhere, but it's about world view. That's why NASA showed you the world. It's about controlling your inner space. So Twitter is actually about the mind war. It's about your inner space. That's why you'd have a guy who's leading the way to outer space, becoming a multi-planetary species, the head of this social media platform and institution. It's all about this consolidation. And of course, a one world order requires a singular religion or worldview, which are interchangeable terms in my perspective. Hey, what's up, caller?
John the Plumber.
Hey, John the Plumber. Good to hear from you again. It's been months.
It's been months. This has been a crazy year, you know. My brother died from fentanyl, man, and it just, like, sent me through an emotional roller coaster, man. I had to, like, you know, just, like not cut the world off. I just had to, like, hibernate a little bit. But I've been listening, and, I mean, like, you bounced around a little bit, so, like, the show's been here, but, you know how it goes sometimes. But I've been listening. I've been trying to, you know, wherever you go you always send me something to wherever you go, and I'll always be a loyal follower, listener, fan.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for your loss there. I mean, it's just, yeah, I understand you have to take time, obviously. These things are, you can't, there's no amount of preparation for anything like that, no matter how much time in advance or if you expect it when it hits. It's so disruptive. But yeah, it's been a crazy year on every level. And the world stage, the circus, is getting increasingly bizarre and unbelievable. But that doesn't change it. It doesn't change the trajectory of it.
What do you think about Vivek Ramaswamy? I mean, I like him. I realize that these people are all world stage actors. But if this were a real world, and if this were like a real politician, if these were all real things, I think he's pretty interesting. You know, he's the first politician younger than me to run. I'm in my mid-40s, and he's super articulate, man, and he's pro-America. What do you think?
Yeah, I like him, and I like a lot of what he said. And in the real world, if we weren't looking at a totally rigged reality, he would be a sensible person to follow. I'm personally more interested in what Dr. Shiva has to say, specifically because he is the only one talking about systems in the sense of...
And then I juxtaposed the cross and the dove. You can see here.
I don't know how my TV just...
It just turned on.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but anyway, look, I understand that whatever people know, or especially here in the chat, they know how rigged these things are. But I do follow these individuals closely, and even if you think they're all just world stage,
You know, he went to Yale, right? I'm from Connecticut. And when I was a kid, my stepdad rode me through New Haven, which is like the central town or the central city of our county, and that's where Yale is. I was like born and raised in the neighboring town of Yale, New Haven, and my stepdad took me through there. He said the Clintons went here to Skull and Bones. He's like, you know what a fraternity is, right? I was like, no. He's like, it's like a gang for rich people. And the Clintons went here, and the Bushes went here, and even though these ones call themselves Democrats and these ones call themselves Republicans, they're all in on it together. He was trying to teach me at a young age, like 14, 15 years old, that who the most important, powerful people in the world were. We're all really behind the scenes on the same team.
That's like a proto red pill moment where someone's like, oh, by the way, reality could be rigged.
DeSantis and Vivek both went to Yale.
Interesting. I don't know if either of them are Skull and Bonesmen, but
no, I don't know. I'm just saying they both went to Yale and they're both running for president. I don't know.
But anyway, hey, listen to this though. If you haven't listened to Dr. Shiva, I was listening to him today, and he talks about the elite as a separate entity, as a swarm, and he suggests, as I do here often, that the left-right paradigm is 100% controlled, which is almost cliche, unless you speak about it in the sense of operating outside of it. And I don't hear anybody else talking about media in this sense. They're always just talking about what the media is saying. They don't go that far back.
Either globalism or anti-globalism. And so far, Vivek Ramaswamy is the only person. He could be full of shit, but he's the only one I've heard that said, I'm anti-globalism. So I don't care if you're a left-leaning. As long as you're not a globalist, I don't really care, because I don't want to have to listen to the rest of the world. Whatever they find valuable, good for you. This is how we do it here. And so I'm like pro-America. It doesn't mean I want to shit all over the rest of the world. I want the freedom for us to do things that we've always done. And I'm actually like even a regionalist. That means like if you're in California and you do it in a different way there, I'm not going to shit all over California. Whatever works for you, do it. Here in Florida, here's how we do it. In the Northeast, they have their own way. We all got our own little styles and techniques. So I'm like pro-freedom. And that's my big beef with the liberals. Like I was a liberal at 20, but I'm in my 40s now. So it's like, these labels have kind of changed a little bit, because like left doesn't really mean pro-freedom anymore. It's very authoritarian. I'm not into that.
Yeah, they're a master.
You know what I mean?
They're a master at masquerading their intentions by using the words that really would convey the opposite, and it's always been the case. You think liberal means libertine, but actually no. Liberal means we need the state power to get everybody to conform. That's absolutely what it means, and we saw this on full display in recent years. And it's like, well, who's really for freedom anymore? The Trump side, they want total control. It seems just to me, it's just like fascism versus fascism these days.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, for example, today, I went into a store, almost like a dollar store. We got these stores in Florida called Big Lots. It's similar to a dollar store, but you can buy cheap, assemble it yourself furniture there. If you need a little end table, you can buy them there for cheap. So when we go in there, there's a trans person in there. A dude with a voice as deep as yours or mine, maybe even deeper, with long, pretty hair, dressed in makeup, and I'm with my 10-year-old son. At no point was I disrespectful to this person. Would I ever call them out of name or out of whatever they call themselves? To this person's face, I was perfectly nice. Even though my son knows my beliefs on all this and stuff, we were still nice to this person. But I think I think the modern conservative is pretty accepting, even if we don't believe in everything like you're into. Just don't shove your shit into our faces, really. Basically, with our kids, I don't care what you do in your house. I don't even care if you have parades. Just don't teach weird sex shit to my kid at school. That's all.
Yeah, I think everybody stands on that same line. And obviously, in the last year, there were many attempts to deliberately provoke all the traditionalists, all the Christians, and there's just multiple attempts, what else can you say? These have to be provocations. Like the thing with Target. You think Target didn't know that the designer of the swimwear had also designed Baphomet clothing? And I was just talking about how
They had
Baphomet.
gay satanic clothing for children at Target. It's not that it was just gay or satanic. It was just like this weird amalgamation of things that are like so, that you could never get away with this 20 years ago. So it's
Well,
like, I don't understand what the hell's happening in the world.
I think it's contrived, is what I'm saying, because there's no way that Target wouldn't look into something like that first. And when you look at the culture wars, Target plays on the left, Walmart plays on the right. And this is by design. That's why I don't take it all that seriously. I think it doesn't represent what's happening everywhere. I think it's what they want you to think is happening. Kind of like Wuhan. They want you to think that people are dropping dead everywhere. Then you watch the other side and you're like, they want you to think that, people are adopting this everywhere. It's a social contagion. So the moral panic that they induce, I think, is the other aspect of the Psy War. And that's kind of where I've ended up with it. But anyway, to your point, though, the only person who would reasonably and rationally lead to the type of world that you're describing is probably Vivek. I don't know about the other ones.
Yeah, it's not that I don't know, like after COVID and everything, I started off as a Trump supporter, and then right after COVID, I was like, no, I'm pretty sure they're all in on it now. You can't, fool me once and then suck me back in. I'm like, yes, we have these values. You're spitting off things that I believe in. Of course I'm going to like what you're saying, but, I still feel like I'm in a movie. And the more people I talk to about it, every once in a while, you meet total strangers who are like, yeah, it doesn't feel real. It feels like we're in a big play.
Well,
we're background characters. We're like extras, and we don't even realize that there's a movie being filmed. That's what it feels like the whole world is.
I think that's the best way of describing it. I've been calling it the world stage. Ask me for when you talk about the shape of the world, someone will say, "Well, what's your model?" I'm like, I don't even think
Swiss cheese.
Well, however you describe it, I think the best way to understand the model concept, we don't experience it as flat or round or moved. Or rather, I would say is we don't think of it as a shape. We're living from our own perspectives, but we live through our world views. And the worldview that the public shares is literally being steered by a movie crew. And the director is Big Brother. And that's pretty much the best way, I think, to describe the imposition of a worldview through the use of mass media. And it's the de facto religion of our time.
Who or what is it? Is it demonic? Is it artificial intelligence? Or is it a biological entity from another dimension realm? We don't really typically in this flat Earth space talk about planets. I don't believe that there's a place called Mars that's floating out in a place called space. But there could be another pocket of a cave parallel to us somewhere that you could get to through a tunnel, and there could be people there. I don't know.
I'm open. I'm open to the idea that there's a Mars colony beneath Denver, and that they're going to come to the surface in 30 years after they've cleared us off, and this will be Mars, and it will have been terraformed, which will explain the blue skies. They'll say we terraformed it, but it's possible easily. But anyway, as far as you said, is it demonic? I think it's interesting to ask, is it AI? Is it the demiurge? Is it demonic? But if you think about it, if you go back through all the different writings of various world leaders, you can find references to this notion that in order to rule the populace who are fickle, you have to use superstition. You have to use the terror of the gods. So what I'm suggesting here is that maybe they've just perfected a system of governance through controlling minds over many successive generations using primarily mythology and religion. And these days, they just do it through mass media and entertainment.
I feel almost like I'm going through my own personal, some kind of simulation. I don't know how real this world is. I consider myself an organic, spiritual entity being in a legitimate, bona fide world, but I don't really know what this world is. And fuck, man. It's scary sometimes,
Okay, but what would you rather have? Questions that you don't have answers to, or erroneous senses of security in explanations that are false. Like the people who don't have
Oh,
curiosity.
that guy keeps saying truth. That's his new slogan. Remember how Obama, he was like the left-wing Obama personality, like Vivek's like the right-wing Obama. And Obama had like hope. That was his big thing. Cool, man. Everyone got motivated. I was like 25 years old at the time. I don't know. It was less than 30. Now Vivek's like truth. And that fucking message resonates with me. I'm like, please, somebody tell me what the hell this world is, what's going on, and who can I trust?
But look, okay, any politician saying truth stands on an edifice of lies. If they are in that position, they are already plugged into the lie world order. There's no opt-out. Like, you could be the most pure-hearted, truthiest person in the world, but if you get mixed up in any of these big media companies and you read their teleprompters, you're a liar by definition, because you're basically just repeating their lies, which we know to be built. I mean, it's the lie world order. There's going to be no reform from within the system.
You had a new caller recently. I don't know if he was new, but I've been following you probably since 2017, 2018. You had somebody call in recently, 1 or 2 shows ago, that I'd never heard before, and this dude was articulate. I was sitting in the car with my son listening to the replay. I said, listen to this guy who's calling in, dude. He knows everything. He knows all the names, the dates, the places, the people. He knows the whole story. There's a lot of us out there that have been following this stuff. So when you hear other people and they have other pieces of the puzzle and you get to hear it coming out of other people, man, it's so satisfying. You know, you don't feel lonely. You know, there's other people that see the inconsistencies of this realm that we're trapped in.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I like the idea of enlarging the pool of callers, listeners, and chatters. And that's one of my objectives now. It's why, I don't know if you know, but like I moved into the headquarters. That's one of the things that happened in the last few months. And the reason why, of course, is we are...
Yeah, I'm happy for it.
Well, I'm building a media company, a publishing company. This is kind of ground zero. And we're going right into publication as well. Back into publication. We've already done our test runs with this. We've done a few pilots, but I think it's important to network, because there are many people who see through this thing 80, 90%. There are many people who have arrived at the right conclusions, but until we network, we can't get the big picture. If it wasn't for the internet, none of us could have a clue, because we wouldn't be able to put together any of these disparate news reports and do this cross-referencing and fact-checking.
Tim, God bless you, man. I don't want to take up all your time. I'm one of the biggest fans of the show, man. I think everything you're doing is great. Please keep up the great work, and I'm gonna keep listening tonight, and hopefully someone else calls in. I look forward to following the show. You take care, bud.
Thanks. Likewise. Appreciate you calling. All right, everyone. That's John the Plumber, longtime caller, longtime listener. Always interesting information and excellent points. And I like catching up. There's been a number of people who haven't called in a while. We've been down for a bit, but we're back up, and we're going to be expanding. I think we do have something very important and unique here. If you really think about it in a bigger context, there isn't a parallel media. Everything, alt media, alternative, independent media, they all exist in the mass media ecosystem. They're all in it. The only ones who aren't are the ones who are creating the worldview itself, those who work in the news benders department. And what we are doing is putting ourselves on par, putting ourselves at the level in terms of our inside knowledge about how this thing works with the actual perps. It's an interesting dynamic, but to network and build a coalition of individuals who understand this separate from the mass media ecosystem has never been done before. Alternative media has always been controlled opposition, and we're the first uncontrolled, unscripted opposition. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, it's Tim. I'm kind of like a first-time caller. I've been listening like 5 years, just like your other caller. Really appreciate what you do, man. Like, you're like the Joe Rogan of the vacuum, as I call it.
Oh, the vacuum.
Well, I don't know how to describe it, but basically, like the space between what's going on But there's one thing I wanted to share with you that might be pretty interesting. You know how like we're always looking, flat earthers, quote unquote, looking for recruities, coming in. We introduce them to, moon hoax. We introduce them to, Horizon. But I did come up with one thing that kind of is pretty interesting. I come up. I actually talked about this tonight with some guys at a party. I was like, yeah, guys, I got this idea. I'm going to come up with vacuum airships. Basically blimps that are evacuated with air. And the premise being that it's going to be lighter than helium. It's going to be permanent. It's not going to require any gas. And these guys go nuts. They like, you don't understand the power of a vacuum. This thing is going to crush you. They do the calculation. This is 2 million psi against your structure, and it just kind of opens up a gate for talking about the freaking moon lander that is apparently filled with 6 psi.
Okay, so you get them to engage critically, and then you show them something that they've already accepted uncritically.
Yeah.
That's a good tactic. I mean, I could see that working. I can see that really opening a conversation.
It's like what happens. You get them on the defensive, arguing your premise. Why? It's kind of the opposite, obviously. The vacuum pressure being on the outside versus the inside. Like there's actually a couple of really interesting videos online about people who've tried to do this with small, 2 cubic meter carbon nanostructure balloons, and they can't hold up. They just collapse under pressure. And they're like, yeah, this is as soon as then I saw bargaining. Okay, what if we go to 6 psi inside, and that was the claimed pressure inside the LEM. It was 6 psi reduced. And once you start then discussing it really just flips the script. They're baffled. They're the ones who are like the engineers who are saying, you're a freaking idiot. You don't understand. You have no idea about this crushing power of the atmosphere. So it's just something I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, I like that. I like that tact. I mean, I've been saying for some time that I want to get some CGI experts to do a series of real or fake hot takes on video clips with their own expertise. And I will throw into the mix of the fake, quote, real, quote, clips from the ISS, which they will say are fake if they take them out of context. So what I'm pointing out here is that, you have selective critical thinking at work here, where the stuff that we're calling BS on is stuff that got past their filters. And you just got to somehow get them to reconsider it with their filters on. That's the trick.
That's exactly, because we have 1% of the material after the filters have been applied. But if we could take those remnants and turn them into opposition, I mean, literally, I was at a party tonight. It was a family party, about 75 people, talking to these guys who were engineers. They are engineers, and I was talking about this idea to them, and they're like almost laughing at me how stupid it is. That it's impossible to create a structure that is going to withhold this, the pressure of Earth's atmosphere. So it's something to think of. It's just, I don't know what you would call it, like some kind of hypothesis, but just wanted to share that with you and say that I really appreciate what you're doing. First time caller, but 5-year listener. Well,
appreciate it very much, and thanks for thank you for calling and sharing that. I think that is an interesting hypothetical, and you want to get people thinking critically about something that they usually shut off their critical thinking for. That's definitely a way to engage that. So call back anytime. Appreciate it.
No, thank you so much, man.
All right, another first-time caller, listener for years, and I figure there are many people who haven't called in yet, but the phones are open, and we're going to be increasingly engaging with callers in the future, especially as we move into our on-the-ground reportage and our print. Dwayne Garrett says there's a guy pressing charges against NASA for the ISS fakery. I'll look into that. Suing over bubbles in space. By the way, if you're in chat and you don't have a blue wrench, I will be handing one out. Now, when I say the lie world order, this is a graphic that kind of describes what I mean. if you look at the screen, it's basically the all-seeing eye on the pyramid, but it shines a light that only describes a circle as big as you can see right there. Beyond that is darkness. And this is the worldview. The area that's lit is the worldview as depicted through the ubiquitous screen. So the all-seeing eye, the capstone, the director of the world stage movie, the script writers, the meta script writers, they have the final version of reality that goes into the history books. For example, all the fake school shootings, all the fake terror attacks, look at your textbooks in a couple of years that they're going to be using it to teach people in the universities and schools, and they're all going to reflect the fake news as reported, as real. The official world view, the one that they sign off on, is the only one that's accepted. Now, if you go outside of that, you get censored. If you're near the edge, they call it borderline content. And the edge of acceptable discourse, or the edge of approved reality, is always shrinking as they increasingly censor. They're not growing the world, they're actually shrinking it. Meanwhile, they're promising outer space way out there. But this is the universe of ideas. It's the mental space that we live in. And this is the space that NASA is ultimately about controlling, and all the space agencies. It's not about outer space. It's about our mental space and our worldview. And I use this as a way of describing, too, where we are and where they are. So the general population live on the bottom. And this is the world of approved beliefs. The pyramidal structure would represent those in the know at various levels. At the bottom levels, you would have your teleprompter readers. You'd have your university instructors. You'd have all of the celebrities who aren't fully in the know about how fake it is, because they're all in their own brick. They're all compartmentalized. Only those at the very top, where it's glowing, would have the total view that the worldview we're showing is just part of the world. And most of what we think of as our worldview is the product of lies by omission, what they don't tell us. Where we fit in this schema is we are in and outside. In other words, we're very aware of their lies, we're aware of their bullshit and all the various versions of it, but we're also aware that beyond their limited, finite, closed system, there's more information. There's more to the world. But they designate that as conspiracy theory, misinformation, malinformation. So what we have done is we have created a concept here of the off-world stage perspective where, yeah, we aren't denying reality, but we're acknowledging that reality goes beyond what they describe, and that the worldview accepted by the consensus is a construct. It's got many superimpositions, things that don't exist, like nukes, like the potential of aliens, and so many other things that we all know about. But I don't think that you can be as informed as the people at the top if you're not including all this extra information, stuff we may not be privy to. So what we're doing here is we're attempting to level the playing field, exiting the world of believers and getting into the realm of being knowers. So we know what we know, but we also have a lot of questions, as opposed to those who accept the world as given, who think they know it all. It's a world of subjectivity. Going through your comments, Mental Labyrinth says, good calls. Yep, thank you for joining. And Mental Labyrinth, I like that screen name because we live in a way, it's a gamed, rigged reality. I've described it as a labyrinth. Like the way out of this world stage construct is seeing through visual lies, through propaganda, emotional appeals, and sleight of mind, logical fallacies. And these are all the things that the masses are trained not to use because they want them to be believers, not knowers. And to be believers, you have to be uncritical. No mental immune system against any passing mind virus. That's why I describe people somewhat derisively in a way as having mind aids, meaning they put down their mental immune system. This is why I describe the Infinite Plane radio program as mind war inoculation. All right, this has been fantastic. I want to say thanks to all the callers, and we're going to have more callers in the future. I'm going to be using the text alerts to send out blasts. This has been Infinite Plane Saturn Day, where we pretty much talk about anything and whatever's on people's minds. And we had a very interesting call today from Jake the Asshole, who brought some news to me about this spray program going on where he lives to get rid of mosquitoes carrying the Nile virus. But the reason why I say it's an interesting call is I have been debating the topic of chemtrails versus contrails, and I'm not closed-minded. I am open to new information, and this is new information to me as far as raising the question of the feasibility of a mass spraying operation, and is it doable? So it just brings more information, and I think that we need to be the most informed. You know, the masses are misinformed by definition. People who don't pay attention are uninformed, which is a position of weakness, and it's a disadvantageous position to be in when a big psyop happens, because you won't know how to decode or deconstruct if you're not paying attention. Not Shocked says, I believe in aliens with nukes. And look, that's fine. I know people who believe in chupacabras and Bigfoot and unicorns. And one of the biggest developments here in the realm of autohoaxology is that we really have fine-tuned the distinction between being a knower and a believer when it comes to what we claim to understand. There's an important distinction here. And the reason why it matters is that the elite control the masses by keeping them lost in a world of subjective beliefs. I mean, just recently, we had this viral story about fake bears. People thought the sun bears at the zoo were fake. And it took a little while for the truth to get out. Now, the reason why I think it's an important story is it demonstrates that even something so absurd as the proposition that bears are fake is enough to throw people for a loop, because they don't have the framework to immediately dismiss it. They don't have the heuristics. They don't have the philosophical framework that would have them immediately screen that out for the following reasons. And then I could list those reasons. But my point is, what we're introducing here with this auto-hoaxology approach, or auto-hoaxing, is actually not new. It's a reiteration of the earliest forms of skepticism, but repurposed for understanding the world as it is today. Bobby Johnson says, awesome session tonight, Tim. Thanks for joining. We will be back. And again, 24/7 live stream is going to kick back on next week. I have a new computer tower on the way. When the 24/7 chat is on, you'll see it's going to cause everything else to, I think, attract a lot of our previous listeners and callers, and it'll allow us to encroach into areas of the world stage we haven't encroached on yet. We're going to be live on TikTok, for example. We have 101 people present here. I want to see if there's anything else that I missed. I had a few notes here I had taken before I go. No, I think that for the most part, we were going to talk about the 8-4 and how it didn't happen and why it matters, but we'll continue that discussion later. I have an article on that subject, so for those of you who are wondering what my thoughts are and what I'm thinking about those who hyped it up, I'm not necessarily dismissing it, but I think we have to have a more rigid system when it comes to entertaining certain ideas, especially things that entail predicting the future. Like Q is a prophecy cult, and I try to shy away from that. All right, thank you for subscribing. I'll put a